Fighter planes are the sharp end of the world's air forces. Over time, they've evolved into the most sophisticated and eye-catching killing machines ever designed by man. So tighten your harness, check your six, and keep your eyes peeled for the 10 greatest fighter planes ever. Coming up on The Greatest Ever, we're on the hunt for the world's ultimate fighter plane.
There's something cruel and mean and nasty about fighter planes, but they're also balletic, superb and beautiful.
These fighters will be judged by their firepower, maneuverability, historical significance, sheer aesthetics and special design features like swept-back wings, multiple wings and even the ability to hover. To help us on our quest, we've got experts like best-selling military author Tom Clancy.
Fighter plane is an aircraft that controls a block of air and denies use of that block of air to the enemy.
Pilot and aircraft collector Kermit Weeks.
In the case of any fighter airplane, the pilot literally becomes part of that airplane.
You're watching The Greatest Ever.
We'll get up close and personal with the 10 greatest fighters. We'll also meet the combat pilots who know these fighters like nobody else.
She's a very good girl.
We'll see what kind of punishment these planes can take, and we'll put you in the cockpit of a modern fighter.
99% boredom and 1% sheer terror.
And show you what air combat feels like.
So who could reach that level was a god.
And when all is said and done, you'll know which one of these planes is the greatest fighter of them all. We start with the number 10 choice of the greatest ever fighters. It's Baghdad, 1991. This bad boy gained star status thanks to its unique ability to remain undetected by enemy radar. It's the unmistakable F-117 stealth fighter, the Nighthawk.
It swoops in, rains death upon its prey before they know that they are there, and hopefully is able to get out before the bad guys know what hit them.
There's a lot to be said for being invisible on a battlefield. If the other guy doesn't know you're there, you can do lots of bad things to him, and he can't see you, so you're safe.
The stealth fighter is a beautifully sinister aircraft. In modern film terms, of course, it would be, I guess it's the plane that Darth Vader would like to fly in Star Wars, if he had an escape aircraft to get out of his Imperial airship.
Flying the stealth is awesome.
The driver is called the Black Jet, and they're also the Saudis called the Shaba, which means ghost.
The greatest ever got unprecedented access to this jet, which has seen action in Panama, Bosnia and Iraq. Many facts about the stealth are still secret. It has an unconfirmed top speed that's close to the speed of sound, Mach 1, or 1,200 kilometers per hour, and it can carry some 2,300 kilograms of bombs. First impressions of this intimidating jet can be misleading, even for pilots.
Walking up to the jet, it has so many odd type features that you would not think it would want to fly.
The odd thing about the stealth, unlike other fighters, there's nothing smooth or streamlined about it. It's all radar deflecting angles.
It's like, in design terms, it's like a wonderful piece of Japanese origami. It's like the designers have taken a big sheet of paper or card and folded it in many angles to create this wonderful shape.
Was it origami, or were there darker forces at work? The greatest ever got into the thinking behind the diamond-shaped stealth with Alan Brown, the jet's chief engineer at Lockheed's mysterious Skunk Works.
To make the diamond fly, we had to do black magic, really.
A diamond-shaped fighter is the ultimate radar-evading design. But how do you make a diamond fly?
And one of the things you can do is start chopping off bits off the back of the tail. And now I'll finish up with something that looks more like this. And we can put a cockpit in the front of it and some inlets. And now this starts looking like an airplane, starting with the diamond. We took a lot of the parts from other airplanes. The engines were stolen, literally, off the F-18 production line. The navigation system came from a B-52, and so on.
Brown and his team conjured up the stealth and neutralized 50 years of radar technology. The multiple-angled shape of the jet ensures that enemy radar signals are bounced away and not back to the enemy, making the plane invisible. It's all about fooling enemy radar. A typical fighter has a radar cross-section of about 5 square meters. The Stealth is less than 0.01 square meters, the size of a small bird, virtually undetectable by radar. The Nighthawk is also covered in a top-secret radar-absorbing material that helps confuse enemy radar.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
So they made the plane invisible, but the next problem was how to make the pilot invisible.
So the thing that we have to do is coat the canopy glass in some way with a metallic shield, a little bit like the highway patrolman's sunglasses. So he can look out, but you can't look in.
Making a plane that's almost invisible to enemy radar has several drawbacks.
It's not terribly fuel efficient. The nature of the design makes for the fact that it gobbles up gas.
The Stealth has a range of 1,200 kilometers, and that means topping up the tank on a regular basis when it's on a long mission. And a bigger fuel bill isn't the only drawback of this fighter's unique shape. It's also more susceptible to bad weather.
Icing is an issue for this aircraft. It is considered an all-weather fighter. However, the same unique shapes that help us to have a low radar cross-section unfortunately work as ice picker-uppers, if you will. So we have to be very careful in what kind of weather that we fly to, and we typically like to stay under clear skies.
The remarkable Nighthawk can run and it can hide, but surprisingly, it can't fight air-to-air, making it a contentious choice for the greatest ever.
It's not really a fighter, it's a bomber. It drops bombs, doesn't carry guns or missiles, at least not that I know of.
So why is the Stealth classified as a fighter by the US Air Force?
Well, no self-respecting fighter pilot is going to fly an airplane which has a B designation like a bomber, so of course it was called an F.
But it's not just called F for pilot vanity. There is another more pertinent reason.
The aircraft maneuvers very much like a fighter. However, the F-117's primary mission is to drop bombs. So one would have to make their own assessment of what a definition of a fighter is.
As far as the greatest ever is concerned, a real fighter needs to be able to mix it up with other fighters, not just drop bombs. That's why the Stealth is relegated to number 10 on our list of the greatest ever fighters. We've got 9 more awesome fighters coming your way, including the plane that can land like a helicopter. The Nighthawk claims the number 10 slot in our search for the greatest ever fighters, and it would be just plain wrong not to include on our list the number 9 pick, the Red Baron's famous DR-1, the Fokker triplane.
It's an unfortunate name when you think about it.
It's a Prussian knight, from the north of Germany on his horse and his helmet with plumes flying, the stream of the feathers flying in the wind. That's the Fokker triplane.
With pilots like Baron Manfred von Richthofen at the controls, this classic World War I German fighter brought terror to the hearts of Allied pilots. The Baron chalked up many of his 80 aerial victories in this fighter, and it's no surprise, really. The DR-1 was the fastest climbing and most maneuverable fighter of its day.
It's not elegant. It's not beautiful, but it is cool.
It's simple, it's efficient, it does what it needs to do. Everything has a place, it all fits in that space.
Single-winged fighters were still in their infancy during World War I, and biplanes were the design of choice, as they could take the harsh gravitational forces of aerial combat. But if 2 wings were good, engineers reasoned 3 should make the DR-1 even better, and they were right. The extra wing allowed the plane to climb higher and fly faster.
The whole purpose behind the 3 wings on this airplane was that it create lift and be able to climb quickly. Aerial combat back then, basically, the faster you could get above somebody, then you could use the momentum coming down to attack them and get back up high and do it again.
With its phenomenal climb rate, the DR-1 could reach 3,000 meters a full 3 minutes before its mortal enemy, the 2-winged Sopwith Camel. When the DR-1 was rolled out in 1917, it wasn't just its superb wings and a top speed of 185 kilometers an hour that made it an awesome fighter. It also had machine guns that actually fired through the propeller arc, a revolutionary World War I innovation. It was Dutch DR-1 designer Anthony Fokker who figured out the secret to firing through the prop. He designed the interrupter, or synchronization gear, that allowed machine gun bullets to pass between the rotating propeller blades and not through them.
Basically, all the interrupter is, it's a cam that runs off the engine. It just interrupts so that the gun will not fire when the propeller is in front.
The DR-1 was a deadly combination of guns and wings, but it wasn't perfect. An aerodynamically unstable design. It never wants to fly straight and level. A pilot can never, ever let go of the controls.
The airplane, when you first fly it, you go, oh my God, there's something that's not quite right. It tends to wallow around a lot. So if you let go of the controls, they don't really go back to a neutral position like you would expect on most airplanes.
This highly unpredictable fighter will bite the unwary and keeps experienced pilots on their toes.
It is a ground looper. That's why they have the what we call the axe handles out on the wings, because the pilots, I think, on a regular basis would come in and land and get the airplane up on a wing, and they put those out there to keep from breaking the wing off. It's tricky every time I get into it. I don't know what's going to happen.
The iconic Fokker DR-1 is arguably the most recognizable World War I fighter, and it will forever be linked to the Red Baron, the most famous ace of all time. But this highly unstable fighter is definitely not pilot-friendly. That's why this mother of all Fokkers is number 9 on our list of the greatest ever fighters. The number 8 fighter on our list made a rather spectacular and infamous appearance on December the 7th, 1941. The Mitsubishi Zero.
Wave after wave of enemy planes bombed American aircraft and units of the Pacific Fleet in a treacherous attack which achieved perfect tactical surprise.
Without the Zero fighter, Japan would never have dared a Pearl Harbor attack.
It was America's first real look at this lethal dogfighter, and it hurt. The Zero could outfly and outfight anything the Allies had.
The A6M Zero fighter, which we called the Zeke, may have been the first real air superiority fighter insofar as it could drive a long way, control a piece of airspace, and then go home.
The carrier-based Zero could go further on a tank of gas than any other fighter, 3,000 kilometers without a refill.
Power-to-weight ratio was very good and very maneuverable and elegant design. Excellent aerodynamics, excellent stability.
It's no wonder this fighter was nimble and quick. The Zero weighed in at 1,800 kilograms, a full 900 kilograms less than the P-40 Warhawk.
The American aircraft, no doubt, technologically more sophisticated, more powerful, more heavily gunned. The pilots are probably equal in talent and intelligence, but that little Japanese aircraft, for all its limitations, can turn inside, spin round, bam, 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 and knock the tail off the American.
The Zero had an astonishing vertical climb rate of 1,400 meters per minute, almost double that of the competition.
In a 1 versus 1 stay-in dogfight, it was a tough atmosphere.
The plane remained an enigma until the US got a lucky break. An intact and airworthy Zero was captured in Alaska in 1942.
Where they had their test pilots and fighter pilots just fly the hell out of the plane.
That's a Zero.
Extensive tests revealed the Zero's secrets. The fighter's lightweight construction couldn't handle speeds over 660 kilometers an hour, or the plane would start to break up.
Once we figured out what it could do and what it couldn't do, we tended to gobble them up.
It could outclimb anything the Americans had, but it couldn't outdive anything because it was too light.
The American strategy was simple. Their fighters were far faster. They just had to avoid dogfighting and use simple hit-and-run tactics instead.
Was they kept high altitude, dive down, hit the Zeros, and zoom right back up.
The American tests also found another glitch in the Zero's armor. It didn't have any. The plane's aerial agility came at the expense of pilot protection.
It was a flimsy airplane. It wouldn't take any punishment. The Japanese, philosophically, thought that a good warrior is always offensive, never defensive. Well, that's fine. Except what if you get killed? Then you're neither offensive nor defensive, you're just dead.
To see how weak the Zero was, the greatest ever decided to bring out some serious firepower and put its pilot protection to the test. American World War II pilots had their backsides protected by thick armor plate.
As you can see, it does stop the round. You could get fragmentation inside the aircraft, which would cause secondary fragmentation to the pilot, but it does offer protection, just very heavy.
Zero pilots had zero protection. This thin plate of aluminium is all that separated a Zero pilot from eternity.
taking 4 rounds, it would go through the skin, as you can see, and seriously enter the body of the pilot.
But Zero pilots never wavered when it came to pilot protection.
Even toward the later parts of the war, the Zero pilots did not want armor plate or anything that added unnecessary weight to their aircraft. And their philosophy was, you know, just kill or be killed.
Towards the end of the war, Zeros were turned into flying bombs. Landing safely was no longer required.
And then it just became a death trap, and a lot of Zeros ended up as being kamikazes, which is not a very good use for an airplane.
Ending the war as a suicide bomber and leaving its pilots unprotected is why this flying ninja is checking out in the number 8 slot on our list of the world's greatest ever fighters. Number 7 on our list of the greatest ever, the fighter with a split personality. It hovers like a helicopter and flies like a fighter. The Harrier Jump Jet.
It's a tremendous aircraft, it really is. You know, a traditional jet fighter needs 10,000 feet. We can put it down literally anywhere. That's got to make it one of the greatest fighters in the world.
The noisiest damn airplane I've ever seen. It's a good airplane, and the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and the United States Marine Corps have made good use of them.
The Harrier was first flown in the 1960s and has continued to see action right through to the latest Gulf War. It was thrust into the public eye during its first taste of combat, the Falklands War in 1982.
It's pugnacious. It can really, you know, it can give a good fight. You can see that. And it proved that, of course, in the Falklands War, where it was a hugely successful aircraft.
Royal Navy Sea Harriers shot down 24 Argentine jets without a single air-to-air loss. The greatest ever reunited RAF Wing Commander Tony Harper with the actual GR3 Harrier he flew in combat.
It looks exactly the same as it did when I last flew it in the Falklands. It's still got bits of paint missing in the same places. It's nice to see it again.
Tony's most memorable mission, saving trapped British paratroopers.
It was during the Battle of Goose Green. The paras were pinned down by the Argentinian defenders. We were tasked at the end of the day to come in and try and deal with some of the artillery positions. We found the targets on our first run, and we hit them. The commander contacted the Argentinians and asked them if they'd like some more of that medicine or if they'd like to surrender. They decided to surrender.
The reason this plane is so successful is its versatility. It has a decent top speed of 1,065 kilometers an hour, but more importantly, this plane can hover.
It's difficult to design a plane that's excellent in both regimes, hovering and forward flight. But if your mission is such that taking off from an unfinished field is an advantage for you, as opposed to optimum high-speed performance, then that aircraft makes sense.
And the reason it hovers? One very powerful Rolls-Royce jet engine and 4 rotating nozzles that can blast an amazing 10,000 kilograms of thrust, literally giving the jet a cushion of air to ride up and down on.
Whereas some aircraft will have 2 engines, we've actually got 4 exhausts, which is what makes the Harrier capable of hovering.
And to control the Harrier when it's in the hover, small air nozzles help keep the plane in position.
We have reaction control valves at all the extremities, in the wingtips, in the nose, in the tail, and also on the rudder. And from that, we feed air from the engine through the reaction controls to, in essence, provide the stability.
The Harrier may be high-tech and revolutionary and cost millions, but the secret of its versatility costs just $100. It's a measly wind vane. It helps the pilots keep the jet pointed into the wind. This flimsy piece of aluminium is the difference between life and death in the Harrier during the critical and dangerous transition from forward flight to the hover.
The way we countered that is probably the cheapest instrument that we've got on the Harrier, which is the yaw vane up here. And as you can see, it kicks into the wind. But until we get into the hover, we need to keep that pointing straight, so we're always into the relative airflow, pointing directly into it. Fantastic system, very cheap.
This fighter's ability to hover does, however, make it easier to knock down in combat. The 4 hot thrust-producing engine nozzles are a magnet for heat-seeking anti-aircraft missiles to lock onto.
It tends to be an easy kill for a heat-seeking missile because the centroid of the heat source tends to be the engine. It's a single-engine airplane, so if you lose that, you're in big trouble.
If something gets close, it's exploding pretty close to the aircraft, and if it knocks off one of the nozzles, it's just going to be completely asymmetric thrust and it won't fly anymore.
During the First Gulf War, 5 Marine Harriers were shot down and 2 pilots died. The Harrier also has a higher crash rate than other top-end fighters, mainly because it's very complicated to fly.
The Harrier is a more demanding aircraft to fly than the average fast jet that you will see.
I mean, if you look at a modern fighter, between the stick and the throttle, there's probably 30 buttons, which micromanage all sorts of things. And you got to be you almost have to be a piano player.
Pilot overload is pretty common with this jet. At least 45 US Marines have died in 143 Harrier accidents since 1971.
But you just have to be very conscious of which lever you are moving, which inceptor you're moving at which time, because if you move the wrong one in the wrong direction, it's easy to get yourself into trouble fairly quickly.
The innovative Harrier jump jet has earned its place in the top 10 list of the greatest ever fighters, but its high accident rate, combined with a high pilot workload, is why the Harrier is bowing out at number 7. Number 6 on our list, the Korean War superstar, and probably the greatest of all the first-generation jet fighters, the swept-wing F-86 Sabre.
In my opinion, out of all the fighters that have ever been flown, the F-86 has all the characteristics you want in a great fighter.
The unique look of the F-86 is that wonderful shark-like nose. And like a shark, its mouth at the front is always open.
Wide open for a reason. It's the critical engine air intake.
It's a long way down there to the J-47, which is the engine in this airplane.
Sabre was every kid's fantasy back in the late 50s. It's just got sleek lines. It's, the wings are swept back. I don't think they've ever made a jet as pretty as the 86.
The greatest ever got airshow and retired combat pilot Dale Snodgrass to put his F-86 through its paces.
And Tower, Sabre 86, Fox Romeo is with you.
And show off the fighter's classic swept wing design in the process.
It's a beautiful day to be in an F-86 flying over the sky.
The Sabre forged its formidable reputation in the Korean War, where it outflew and outfought the comparable MiG-15 on an almost daily basis, and earned the nickname Ace Maker. To become an ace, it takes 5 combat kills.
It was a pretty good airplane in its day. In the Korean War, it chewed up a lot of MiGs. It had an 11-to-1 kill ratio of winning to losing against the MiG-15.
Air power was the decisive factor in preventing a communist victory in Korea.
To find out exactly how good this plane was in combat, the greatest ever got some airtime with Korean War F-86 pilot General Boots Blesse, a double ace with 10 MiG kills.
I think the proudest moment in my life as a fighter pilot was when I became an ace flying the F-86. I loved it. It was a great airplane. It turned well, it climbed well. It was just an easy and a fun airplane to fly. And the more you flew it, the better, the more performance you could get out of it.
The F-86 has got swept back wings, and when you sweep wings back, you instantly give an aircraft a very, very dynamic, fast look.
The F-86 Sabre's distinctive swept back wings weren't there just to make the jet look pretty. They allowed the jet an incredible top speed in straight and level flight of 1,075 kilometers an hour without coming apart at the seams.
Aircraft, as they got faster and faster, had to tolerate thinner and thinner airfoils. That made their wings very flexible and very vulnerable to twisting off. By sweeping the wing back, you suppress that.
One of the main features of this revolutionary wing design, the performance-enhancing wing slats.
As you come down the wing on both sides, you'll see these devices, which we call slats. They're not mechanically controlled by me or hydraulically controlled. They just fall out, and as the airplane slows down and the angle of attack increases, then they will roll down. And what they do is allow you to land the airplane slowly. It has an extra benefit of when you're in a dogfight. It increases the wing area and the airplane turns better.
With its sleek look and faster design, there are also suggestions that this aircraft may have broken the sound barrier before the legendary Chuck Yeager.
There is a rumor that the F-86A, ex-F-86A, was actually the first airplane to go supersonic, prior to Chuck Yeager, in a dive.
For top guns like Boots Blesse, breaking the sound barrier in the Sabre was just a whole lot of fun.
The F-86 could go supersonic, but it was straight down with a lot of power. And they invited us to air shows, and we'd go out and we called it our boom demonstration team. and we'd get up at about 35 or 40,000 feet, roll over, and we'd come down. And everybody would go down, everybody go through the speed of sound. We'd break windows in the hangar and everything, and everybody thought it was wonderful.
The swept wings gave it maneuverability, but its firepower gave it the real edge in the air. The Sabre was armed with 6 machine guns. It could also carry 8 5-inch rockets or 900 kilograms of bombs.
The guns were actually located here, and the ammo was held down here. And now these are just, that's where I put my bags when I take the airplane to an air show.
Dale Snodgrass may use the gun compartment for a luggage locker, but Boots Blesser used the F-86's guns to kill the enemy.
When you first go into combat, I think one of the most exhilarating moments that you'll ever have in your whole life is when you're up there and you spot an enemy airplane, and you start turning a little bit with him, and all of a sudden you see his wing drop, and he turns around and turns into you, and it becomes obvious to you that he sees you, you see him, and one of the two of you are not going home.
Why is the F-86 number 6 in our top 10 list of the greatest ever fighters?
It's maneuverable, it's responsive, it's reliable, and it was a great killing platform in its day. Absolutely in the top 10.
The Sabre's moment of glory was the Korean War. But as a first-generation jet fighter, the F-86 was quickly outclassed by more modern designs, and withdrawn from frontline service by the late 1950s. It just didn't have the staying power. We're halfway through our countdown, and so far we've had a fighter that can hover and one that fools enemy radar. But still to come, a Cold War icon and the darling of the RAF, as we search for the greatest ever fighter. So far, we've seen 5 excellent planes, but there are 5 to go before we find out which is the greatest ever fighter. Up next, in the number 5 position, the Allied nemesis and the pride of the German Luftwaffe during World War II, the Messerschmitt Me-109.
It's like a racing horse. In the air, as soon as you are cleared the takeoff, it was an easy aircraft to fly, a good aircraft to fly.
It was a good gun platform. It could perform well, it could turn well, it could climb well.
The 109 saw action from the Battle of Britain to the Russian front, from North Africa to Norway.
As soon as you see a swastika on a plane, particularly on the 109, you just think, these are the bad guys coming, really. That's what it is. Here comes Hitler and the boys and the Luftwaffe.
It just looks so German. You know, this was at a time in history where nations had distinctive looks in their products.
The Spitfire was a very elegant solution to killing you. The Messerschmitt was a very straightforward solution to killing you. It looked like it wanted to kill you.
And killing is what the 109 did a lot of. The greatest ever reunited Luftwaffe triple ace Oscar Bosch with the Me-109. He trained on these fighters and went on to shoot down his share of Allied aircraft. Putting the enemy into the gun sight became second nature.
When the bomber did fit in from wingtip to wingtip into the arc, into the circle, then you knew you were exactly 400 meters away. And that was our time to start by opening fire.
The 109's top speed of 560 kilometers an hour was close to that of the Spitfire. But for many Allied pilots, having a 109 on their tail was a potential death warrant.
The 109 had our great respect. By the same token, anything with black crosses on it had our great respect. And certainly this was a very excellent fighter aircraft.
Alongside the 109's formidable machine guns, the plane also had a very lethal cannon. It was actually built into the engine and fired through the center of the propeller. The shells were filled with high explosives and carried a much heavier punch than the machine gun bullets, making it particularly deadly against enemy bombers.
It reaches further, it is doing more damage, and of course it's a heavier weapon, and the ammunition is heavier as well.
During World War II, more Me-109s were produced than any other fighter. Designer Willy Messerschmitt's winning formula for this plane's amazing success was to design the smallest fighter he could and hang the strongest engine he could find on the front of it.
It was designed to be manufactured quickly and easily, and that was certainly very successful.
It was built in sections. It was designed to take the engine off very quickly in case they had a problem. They could just bolt another one on and send it out.
But there was a weakness, a very lethal weakness. It had a nasty habit of crashing on takeoff and landing.
I think designers optimize an aircraft for high speed and for maneuverability and so forth. And oh yeah, by the way, it's got to land.
It was very difficult to handle on the ground because the main landing gear was sort of toe out like that. It made it very unstable and wobbly.
As you can see, the landing gear is rather tight. You know, you don't have much control as such in takeoff or for the landing. But you have to be a good pilot. You must know what is involved. Chance would not be better than 50-50 that you would crash before you're airborne.
Almost a third of the 33,000 109s built were destroyed during takeoff and landing.
And it's no surprise that there's only about 1 or 2 of them still flying today.
The ME-109 is number 5 on our list of the world's greatest fighters because more of these aircraft were lost in takeoff and landing accidents than in actual air-to-air combat.
The ME-109 was a good airplane, it just wasn't good enough to win the Battle of Britain.
If Darwin had a favorite fighter, it would be the number 4 plane on our list, the revolutionary and evolutionary F-18 Super Hornet.
The F-18 is one of the more lethal airplanes that there is out there, and I love flying for that. I know if I get into the merge with an adversary airplane that he is going to die.
I flew the F-18, or the CF-18, the Canadian F-18, from 96 to 99, and I would say that those were the 3 best years of my flying career.
The F-18 is a multi-role aircraft that can drop bombs and kill people, or shoot airplanes down and kill people.
The F-18 is probably our leading conventional modern fighter of the present day.
The greatest ever got up close and personal with the US Navy's latest Super Hornet squadron, the Fighting Redcocks, and Commander Nick Mongello, our personal F-18 pilot and tour guide.
I'd be lying to you if telling you that it's not fun strapping on a jet that's able to go supersonic and do loops and dogfight and drop bombs and rage around down low. That's a lot of fun.
Some planes are fast. This fighter is ballistic. Its 2 afterburning jet engines give it a top speed of 1.8 Mach, or almost 2,000 kilometers per hour.
The turn rate you could get, the nose authority, it was just fantastic, and I loved it.
The F-18 is an overachiever when it comes to fighters. It can fight air-to-air and hit the enemy with bombs on the same mission.
Converts a flip of a switch from a fighter plane to a precision attack bomber, which is not a bad piece of switch hitting.
The F-18 has been in combat for over 25 years. Armed with a 20mm cannon, bombs and missiles, the Hornet has proven itself during both Gulf Wars, Afghanistan and Bosnia. During Operation Desert Storm, Hornets flew some 5,000 strikes against the Iraqis, losing only 2 jets to enemy fire.
It's very much heroic Imperial America getting out there and kicking ass.
I can get into the target, I can carry a nice array of air-to-ground weapons, drop the bombs on that target, and I can go ahead and fight my way out.
During the first Gulf War, Mongo put his money where his mouth is, proving himself in combat when his flight mixed it up with Iraqi MiGs.
We were basically jumped by 2 Iraqi MiG-21s. We quickly, with a push of a button, went from that air-to-ground master mode to the air-to-air mode, detected the MiGs on our nose at about 8 nautical miles. The missile hit the MiG at about half mile from in front of me, and I rolled over the top of him as he was exploding in flames about 1/10 of a mile beneath me. From the time they alerted us to the time we downed the MiGs was about 45 seconds.
The 2 F-18s continued on their mission, smashing their targets and returning safely home. And believe it or not, pilots like Mongo are now even more deadly in their new F-18E Super Hornets. Case in point, his latest bit of high-tech kit, a helmet that's a little bit like Star Wars meets Buck Rogers.
This is the joint helmet. This is somewhere around the $100,000 point.
In this case, looks really can kill. Where the pilot looks is literally where the weapons are aimed.
All I have to do while I'm in my plane, I can be flying that direction, is look left. I can lock my sensors on and my heat-seeking missile onto you and kill you.
But all the high-tech computer-driven toys can become too much to handle. Pilots call it helmet fire when there's just too much for the human brain to process.
The problem comes in is when you're multitasking, when you are operating the radar, looking at your forward-looking infrared, or defending against a SAM system where you have to use expendables or your jammer. So at times, you become task saturated. You can go ahead and have helmet fires, etc., and just start to lose it a little bit.
The Hornet is a multitasker. It operates from land, but its natural habitat is the carrier, where deck space is tight. The plane even has folding wingtips, which means more room in the nest for other Hornets. Getting off the carrier means strapping the jet to a steam catapult, essentially the world's most powerful slingshot, and blasting a single 10,000-kilogram jet into the sky. It isn't exactly a hands-on experience for F-18 drivers. The flight computer is in control during the launch.
Well, during the catapult launch in the F-18, the pilot does not hold on to the stick.
Pilots must place their right hands in full view on the canopy rail before they're shot off the carrier.
Basically, the airplane will fly itself away at about a 10-degree positive climb rate. Once the airplane achieves weight off wheels, then at that point the pilot can take his hand off the towel rack, place it on the stick, and continue flying.
So the pilot is only allowed to touch the controls after the jet is actually flying. And if you think that's hard, try landing a multi-million-dollar jet on a postage stamp-sized carrier in the middle of the ocean.
Day landings are something that naval aviators will go ahead and volunteer for any time to go out and get a day landing. But at night, nothing is routine.
My palms get sweaty when I think about it. Bad weather night carrier landings are the hardest thing to do in aviation. Within the last 40 seconds of the approach, you probably make, on the average, 50 to 100 small engine changes to control my airspeed exactly and my glide slope.
The name of the game is catching a steel cable on the deck of the carrier with the F-18's tail hook to keep the fighter from going over the edge of the ship.
When your hook goes across the back end of the ship, you're plus or minus 6 inches in altitude, and you're going 135 knots or 150, 60 miles an hour.
And you are literally with your knees shaking as you go ahead and land.
It's pretty intense, very intense.
But the very impressive steroid-enhanced, computer-controlled Hornet blows past at number 4 on our list of greatest ever fighters. Why? Because the pilot spends as much time dealing with flight computers and weapon systems as actually flying the jet. Blasting in at number 3 on our list of the world's greatest fighters is the Kalashnikov rifle of Soviet fighters, the MiG-21.
MiG-21 is a rocket ship. It has a lot of get up and go. It was the threat that I trained to for many, many years.
For Romanian pilots to fly MiG-21 was the top of the, what was the elite, So who could reach that level was a god. I still dreaming that I'm flying MiG-21, so yeah, I love that plane. I love that.
This Cold War fighter first appeared in the late 1950s. Named after its designer, the Mikoyan 21 is today the most produced jet fighter in the world, with a staggering 10,000-plus MiG-21s serving in some 40 countries. During the Cold War and over Vietnam, the MiG-21, NATO codenamed Fishbed, was the jet to watch out for.
Yeah, I think the MiG-21 was a very, very lethal-looking airplane. It had nice lines on it, had good performance, and handled by the right kind of pilot was a real dangerous adversary.
The greatest ever caught up with a dangerous Cold War adversary, Romanian MiG-21 pilot Eugen Maxim, for the inside scoop on this fighter.
It was like a bullet. Everything it did very fast, It was very, very smooth. The nicest thing to fly over the clouds, the sky, the clouds, and put on a wing, inside, and it was very cool, yeah.
But what made this plane so cool for the pilots and so special for its foes?
It's got a big engine, a big afterburner, and that thing is business. I mean, you're strapping on a rocket and going for a ride.
A very fast ride indeed. The MiG-21 is capable of a searing 2.3 Mach, or 2,200 kilometers an hour. This plane really is all engine, and its engine air intake is what gives it that distinctive look.
I like that tubular fuselage with a diffuser cone in the front. It's just no-nonsense inlet design.
The strange-looking diffuser cone in the engine air inlet actually moves in and out, controlling the flow of air to the engine.
It's that big spike in the nose of the MiG-21 that gives away what it's there for. It's there as a sort of supersonic battering ram.
Aside from being fast, the MiG-21 was also resilient and typically Russian. No fancy shelters for this fighter.
We didn't have hangars for each plane, you know, like in America or like in States or West. No, we kept all the planes outside, you know, like with 2 inches of ice on it, and we took off.
The MiG-21 was built tough, meaning no refined finishes for this brutish fighter.
By American standards, it was crudely built, and the pieces don't all fit together. The Russians had serious problems with quality control on every Soviet weapon I've ever seen.
The MiG-21 was designed to hit the enemy and keep going. Its small wings just weren't made for dogfighting.
Great high-speed performance, but in a turning fight, it bleeds its energy very quickly. In other words, it's not able to sustain its airspeed.
And if the plane was rolled too quickly in air-to-air combat, there was often trouble.
It was too easy to roll it. If you roll it, you know, more than 90 degrees per second, it was dangerous. You could go on auto rotation and it happened.
Hard to handle with its short wings and short range, maybe, but was it done on purpose?
I've often wondered if the Russians didn't put short legs in their planes deliberately to keep the pilots from defecting. That's not entirely a joke. But every Russian airplane I know have had short legs.
The MiG-21's limited range, small wings and poor workmanship put it in the number 3 position of the greatest ever fighters. Number 2 on our list of the greatest fighters ever, the unmistakable Battle of Britain starlet, the Supermarine Spitfire.
Flying a Spitfire was like dancing with the most beautiful girl at the ball.
It's inspirational. It's just drop-dead gorgeous from any angle.
It's the only aeroplane which reduced my wife to tears.
A perfect combination of form and function.
It is so responsive. You just feel part of the airplane when you get in.
Sheer beauty, sheer balletic movement in the sky, the association of heart and land and soil and sky, and it punched out the Luftwaffe at the time that Britain was all alone. That's quite something.
A champion of the air-to-air duel, the Spitfire helped turn the tide during the Battle of Britain in 1940. Armed with 8 machine guns, it knocked Luftwaffe fighters and bombers from the skies. The Spitfire's performance and aerial supremacy is all down to its wings. These elliptical or oval-shaped wings made this fighter instantly recognizable from below and deadly from above. The reason behind the beautiful wing design? Room for the guns.
A requirement came up for having more guns in the wings, and that required a bit more room. So the easy way to do that, and also get a highly efficient wing, was to broaden the wing out in the mid area and make it elliptical.
Another benefit was a very efficient wing with increased lift that allowed this fighter to turn on a dime. The Spit's distinctive wing shape also meant the enemy could see it coming.
The Spitfire was a beautiful, beautiful aircraft. But of course, the beauty alone doesn't count in the air in a situation of war. It's a matter of he is your enemy and he tries to get you down.
Canadian Spitfire pilot Lloyd Berryman was awarded the DFC, the Distinguished Flying Cross, for taking on German fighters. The greatest ever put him back in the pilot's seat.
Getting in the cockpit of this Spitfire here today, it just brings home the 62 years since I've been in this position. What a wonderful feeling it is to get inside this aircraft. For many of us, it was like walking in the front door of our home. And we treated this aircraft with great respect, and we expected a lot out of this aircraft, and it performed for us. It was easy to fly, and once you trimmed it up after airborne, it was indeed just like flying on a cloud.
Flying on a cloud, maybe, but not for long. The Spitfire Mark II was a home defense fighter with a limited combat range of 600 kilometers. It was supposed to take off, hit the enemy, and land.
The obvious disadvantage about the Spitfire, if you could call it that, would be its very short range. They didn't anticipate at that time that this aircraft would be flying the channel and indeed flying over enemy territory.
You had to be able to go all the way to Germany and come all the way back. And Spitfires simply didn't have the range.
Problems aside, the Spitfire is a plane that has an emotional appeal all its own.
Spitfire is one elegant, sexy-looking airplane, and it was one of the all-time great fighters.
It has to be. Just look at it. Small, lightweight, beautiful, balletic, crafted, and a machine that really expresses the country it was built for and fought for, and a little tiny machine that stood up, really, with those great pilots to the might of Adolf Hitler in the Second World War. Now, come on, you can't beat that, can you?
As far as I'm concerned, the Spitfire is the finest fighter aircraft ever, regardless of what anyone else said.
It was a close call, but the Spitfire comes in at number 2 on our list of the world's greatest fighters. Why? Because its limited range meant it couldn't take the fight to Berlin and back. Something the fighter in the coveted number 1 slot did on a regular basis. Here's a hint. Like the Spitfire, it was powered by the incomparable Rolls-Royce Merlin. We've gone through 9 incredible fighters. All that remains on the greatest ever is the number 1 fighter of all time. In the number 1 slot, it's the superlative North American P-51 Mustang.
I've had an opportunity to fly a lot of different fighters in my collection, and the Mustang has got to be right up at the top.
Probably number 1 because the fact that it got me through the war, saved my life. It is a beautiful airplane.
And the Mustang is the greatest fighter ever.
I was very lucky enough to fly a P-51 Mustang in the States, in Texas, and it is as good as you think it is.
The Mustang had a blistering top speed of 716 kilometers an hour, over 80 kilometers an hour faster than the ME-109. And no other fighter could touch its ability to go the distance, 2,400 kilometers. The Spitfire Mark IV was lucky to make it 800 kilometers. Our number 1 plane accounted for almost 5,000 air kills, more than any other Allied fighter, and created over 280 fighter aces. Who better to give the greatest ever an insight into our number 1 plane than American war hero and triple ace, retired Colonel Clarence E. Bud Anderson.
The Mustang gave me an advantage because I felt like no matter what situation I was in, if I was at a disadvantage, I knew what to do to break the attack and perhaps press on and turn the tables.
The Mustang made its name escorting American bombers deep into Germany.
A Mustang could stay with the B-17s. They could go anywhere the B-17s went and bring them home.
No other Allied fighter could fly as high or go as far as the mighty Mustang.
It was historically successful. Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, said when he saw Mustangs escorting bombers over Berlin, he knew then the war was lost.
From Luftwaffe boss Hermann Goering down to the German pilots, they all knew the Mustang was the beginning of the end.
The Mustang, it was always a frightening sight because you knew you have now not more than a 50-50 chance to be successful or to be killed.
And racking up enemy kills was something Colonel Bud Anderson became very good at. One particular ME-109 didn't have a chance.
And I had the old Mustang just climbed right up, just beautiful. Just inside him, fired a burst. I saw a little tracer go by his right wing, gave it a little bit of rudder, and then caught him right in the middle of the airplane. And I could see the wheel well, I could see the grease, and I could count the rivets. I was so close. And he just rolled over there from 29, 30,000 feet and just went straight down.
So what gave the Mustang its edge in combat? It was this fighter's wing design that resulted in its unequaled speed, maneuverability, and range.
The design of the P-51 wing incorporated all the good lift-drag ratio features of the elliptical wing of the Spitfire without the complication of manufacturing.
The secret? This new wing design was easy to build and provided unmatched lift for its size.
It was a very high-performance airfoil, and fortunately it also gave it a pretty maneuverable airplane too. It was a great innovation.
The Mustang, conceptually, was a greatly improved Spitfire. It had much more legs than the Spitfire did, but all the other positive characteristics.
But it was a combination of luck and Anglo-American ingenuity that turned the Mustang into the greatest ever fighter.
Initially, the airplane came out with the Allison. Somebody got the idea, hey, let's try the engine out of the Spitfire and the Hurricanes. That engine is what made this a great airplane.
physically, it represented the great alliance between the United States and Great Britain. And that's a wonderful idea, that this aircraft really was about joining hands, or joining wings, if you like, across the Atlantic, and then taking those wings out to take out Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Terrific.
The greatest ever couldn't pass up the opportunity to fire up the Mustang's Merlin and go flying with Ed Shipley, one of the most experienced P-51 pilots flying today.
And we give rides every day in this Mustang, and what we tell people is when you get in this thing, it's going to be like taking one of the national monuments out for a ride. I mean, there's just so much history involved with it. It's unbelievable. It just sends a chill through your spine when you get inside it.
The P-51D model is the quintessential Mustang, fully loaded with 6 .50 caliber machine guns and the classic bubble canopy.
It's a big, heavy airplane. It was maneuverable enough to do the job, and it packed a very heavy punch.
And just how reliable was the Mustang?
I flew 116 missions. That's about 480 hours and 20 minutes of combat flying, and never had an abort. Never turned around for any reason, mechanical or weather or whatever.
The Mustang's incredible success as a World War II fighter is why it remains a coveted plane in the 21st century.
The thing about the Mustang is it's the one airplane that fighter pilots even today want to try.
Well, at the moment, I'm sitting here thinking I'm probably one of the luckiest pilots kicking around, in that you've picked 10 aircraft and I've flown 3 of them. But I won't really consider myself truly lucky until I've been in a P-51.
You know, I've gotten a chance to fly all kinds of airplanes, from Corsairs, Spitfires, F-86s, and as far as I'm concerned, the Mustang's the greatest fighter of all time.
I still fly the Mustang today, and not just a Mustang, but a Mustang painted just like my old Crow that I flew in World War II. And people ask me, says, you know, Bud, are you having any fun? And I say, you know, you gotta be kidding to ask me a question like that.
First flown over 60 years ago, the P-51 Mustang, with its classic lines and boxer stance, is guaranteed its place in aviation history as the greatest ever fighter.
It's a great airplane. Mustang is a great, great airplane.
Tonight, the greatest ever goes in search of the ultimate helicopter.
Helicopters don't really fly. They vibrate so badly the ground rejects them.
It's the magic carpet of the sky.
The things that it can do that no other flying vehicle can do.
To earn the right to be the greatest ever helicopter, the machines must prove their worth.
They have a greater potential than other aircraft to change the world.
On a battlefield, supporting troops, or if it means out in the bush putting out fires, there really is nothing that can match the performance of a helicopter.
It's the ultimate extension of the human body that allows him total freedom over the whole planet.
Fly helicopter is great because you feel free.
It is an exhilarating experience to fly a helicopter.
To fly is heavenly, to hover is divine.
We're going to push these helicopters to the limit, turning the world's fastest upside down. We'll deliver a glass of champagne the hard way in a Force 8 gale, and discover just how deadly they can be. Ten machines, but only one can hold the title Greatest Ever Helicopter. Starting our countdown is the greatest aerial crane ever built. At number 10, it's the Ericsson Air Crane.
The Ericsson Air Crane is the most powerful, most versatile helicopter in the Western world.
This particular helicopter is the sports car of heavy lift helicopters. Bar none, there's maybe some that lift more, but none that move faster.
It's a fun machine to fly. It's very agile, very quick, and has a lot of horsepower.
For heavy lift of heavy equipment into really difficult situations, it is absolutely without peer.
The air crane can lift an incredible 12.5 tons, but its real strength is in its ability to place these colossal loads with absolute precision. In 1976, an air crane topped off Toronto's CN Tower. At 553 meters, it's the tallest freestanding structure in the world.
The air crane really is a Swiss Army knife of the skies. The capabilities of it, from an aerial crane, if we're talking about ski towers, if we're talking about heli-logging, or if we're talking about from a firefighting perspective, there really is nothing else out there that will match on the capabilities.
It's amazing it can scoop up 2,000 gallons of water in a mere 45 seconds, which is absolutely fabulous.
It can refill its tank in as little as 45 centimeters of water. So if we're looking in areas such as California when they had the Santa Ana fires, these aircraft have actually gone in and they're allowed to basically go after water sources anywhere. This might mean your pool in your backyard, and there has been instances where the heli tanker has gone in and sucked out someone's pool.
Originally designed to recover downed aircraft and move heavy military equipment, the air crane now excels in its civilian clothes. In the remote forests of Canada, its precision lift capability has given it a new role. In a place where no other vehicle can go, it's become the ultimate logger.
It's an odd thing to see. When you look at it, you're thinking, it's like prehistoric yet futuristic.
There really is nothing pretty about the air crane. It's actually, the nickname is the Dragonfly.
Helicopters aren't designed for style points. They're designed to fulfill a job. I mean, a tractor trailer isn't as pretty as a Ferrari, but a Ferrari can't haul 40 tons of cargo. And there are times in life when you need to get 40 tons of bricks or fertilizer or whatever from point A to point B.
Its lack of style is really based on giving it as much functionality as it can, wanting to get rid of as much of the fuselage claptrap and the weight so that you've got the most payload that you can possibly pick up.
It's basically nothing but engines, absolutely minimal airframe, and a rotor system. There's nothing there that's there for aesthetics or looks. It's just there to lift stuff vertically.
And lifting is what the air crane is good at. As the co-pilot monitors the dials, the pilot leans out and manipulates the hydraulic grapple, a difficult task as the grapple is on the end of a 200-foot cable. The jaws can exert over 32,000 pounds of pressure to hold the logs, which can weigh up to 10,000 pounds each. But this muscle power comes at a premium.
The cost to operate the air crane, you're looking at $9,000 US per hour. That's before you start to add in the fuel costs for the aircraft.
I would say in just an average logging cycle, the aircraft burns about 500 US gallons of fuel an hour. So it's a thirsty bird.
Overall, that's a whopping 10,000 US dollars per hour.
The real key to its success is to keep it flying as often as you can and as regularly as you can, because it costs so much money to operate.
With so much money at stake, speed is definitely the name of the game. A skilled air crane pilot can lift 45 bundles of trees from mountain to landing zone in 1 hour.
And I guess the object of the game is to be as fast as you can and as smooth as you can.
Turns down. Grapples are free.
At this rate, the air crane clears up to 1,000 trees a day. With each log worth up to 5,000 US dollars, that's a turnover of $5 million a day. Compare that to the daily cost of the air crane, just $140,000, and it's suddenly an incredibly economic tool.
Like everything else, it's a compromise. It's very thirsty in fuel, but and it's not designed for going long distances. It's designed to lift loads, and it does that well.
There is really nothing out there that can match the performance of the air crane, and I think you're going to see it in the skies probably for another 20 or 30 years.
I think that the air crane could be called the muscle man of heavy lift helicopters.
I think it's one of the greatest helicopters I've ever flown. Definitely the most favorite machine that I've ever flown. And I don't know if I'd really want to fly anything else.
The air crane is an incredible lifting machine, but without a cargo area, its hauling capability is limited to external loads. For that, it gets 10th place. Coming up, 9 more fantastic helicopters, including the ultimate transport machine.
If we can tie a sling to it, we can take it.
Plus, we toast the most courageous chopper in the sky.
When you see it coming over the horizon, you know the cavalry have arrived.
As we search for the greatest ever helicopter. And in our search to find the greatest ever helicopter, the Ericsson Air Crane claimed the number 10 slot. And at number 9 is a machine that scaled new heights of helicopter design. It is the Llama.
The Llama, of course, is the highest flying helicopter ever.
In 1972, the aircraft actually flew to an altitude of 41,000 feet.
Frenchman Jean Boulet's incredible 12,442-meter record still stands to this day, over 30 years later.
If you put that in perspective today, that's where you're looking at where airliners would be flying. If you're looking at a 747 or anything in that range, that's typically the altitudes that those aircraft will be flying at.
The Llama was originally designed for the Indian Air Force to defend their high-altitude borders in the Himalayan mountains.
The Llama is amazing because it does many things that the ordinary helicopter cannot do. Most helicopters operate efficiently up to around 8,000 to 10,000 feet. In other words, fairly close to the ground. The Llama, however, can operate very efficiently in the 20,000 feet altitudes.
To operate at such high altitude, the Llama had to overcome the laws of physics.
The problem with flying at altitude is a lack of oxygen molecules in any given square foot of airspace. The higher you go, basically the thinner the air gets, and there's really less and less for the rotor blades to bite into, less air for the engine to breathe.
At 20,000 feet, the air is less dense and cuts the engine's performance in half. The Llama uses a very powerful engine. Its 870 horsepower provides over twice the amount of vertical thrust of all other helicopters in its weight class.
The engine itself is capable of blowing up the transmission at lower altitudes. Up until 13,000 feet, you're not able to use all the power that the engine provides, and from 13,000 feet above, you are.
To utilize all this power, the Llama has the lightest airframe possible. It's really nothing more than a bubble for the pilot to sit in, attached to an open tail boom. Its only additional equipment is to enable the pilot to operate at altitude.
This is probably the only civilian aircraft in the country that is set up with an oxygen system.
Without the oxygen, it would be impossible for the pilot to breathe above 12,000 feet.
If I have a problem of any type, at 14,000 foot or above, that's an environment that I can't live in. It's a pretty dangerous situation. I probably have half hour, 45 minutes of useful consciousness once my oxygen was depleted, and probably take a big nap after that point.
Why do I like the Llama when I see it? Because it's like a little wasp. It's lightweight and it buzzes around, but you know that it's got huge capability.
There is nothing else out there today that would compare to the aircraft. It was meant to do one thing, and that was fly at high altitude.
But a helicopter designed with one purpose in mind limits what it can be used for, so the Llama gets 9th place. If you've got loads of cargo and want it shifted in a hurry, then a helicopter at number 8 is the beast for you. It's the greatest transport helicopter ever. It is the Chinook.
The Chinook, ugly beast.
It's a bit of a laugh. It's a fun helicopter. Kids love it.
Unlike most helicopters, the Chinook has 2 main intermeshing rotors. This gives it incredible amounts of power.
There's an additional efficiency from having 2 lifting rotors. You don't waste any power on a tail rotor. So Chinook becomes a very powerful lifting helicopter with a great capacity to carry a lot of people and a lot of load.
It can lift a massive 12 tons inside or out. And not only that, with a flight control system based on that of a 747, the Chinook is one of the smoothest rides in the sky.
This system maintains heading, altitude, airspeed, and any other control that I deem necessary in order to get from point A to point B.
As well as its flight control systems, the Chinook has a complex gearbox to prevent the intermeshing rotors from hitting one another. Other than that, it's just like flying any other helicopter.
The flight controls in the Chinook are identical as that in a regular helicopter. The cyclic stick forward makes the aircraft go forward. The cyclic stick aft is going to slow the aircraft down. Application to the left will make the aircraft turn left, and an application of right cyclic will make the aircraft turn right. The thrust control in the Chinook, normally referred to as the collective in other aircraft, we here in the Chinook call it thrust control. Me pulling up on the thrust control will make the aircraft climb, and the reduction in thrust or power will make the aircraft descend. The tail rotor pedals in conventional aircraft are used to control the tail rotor and enable the aircraft to turn about its own axis at a hover. The same function is true for the pedals on the Chinook.
A lightly loaded Chinook is like a sports car, has unbelievable handling and response, and it's a delight to fly. When it's heavily loaded, it's still a delight to fly, but you have to think a little more ahead of time because of the inertia of the helicopter.
Even carrying its maximum load, the Chinook can still fly at over 160 miles an hour.
This is the center cargo hook of the aircraft. It provides us the capability of lifting up to 12 tons.
If you consider that the helicopter, for example, is capable of lifting 50,000 pounds altogether, and it only weighs 30,000 pounds, you've got quite a bit of extra thrust capability that you can use. And it is just an incredible rush to just lift off the ground and climb vertically at 2,000, 3,000 feet a minute, almost immediately off the ground.
The Chinook is always the right tool for the job, just based on its multitude of roles. If we can tie a sling to it, we can take it.
But the Chinook is so much more than just a versatile heavy lifter.
We have coined the Chinook our box of Legos just based on its multitude of roles that it can assume. One of them, when we do joint training with the U.S. Special Forces and we're doing water extractions. By that I mean that the aircraft will physically land in the water. We will lower the ramp. Water will enter the cabin area, allowing the boat to physically drive into the aircraft.
The Green Beret guys come zooming up in their Zodiac, drive the boat right into the hull of the airplane, and the airplane takes off, dumps the water, and flies home. And I didn't believe that until they showed me a picture of it.
The Chinook is a truly awesome machine, and I wouldn't fly anything else.
The Chinook is a workhorse. It's a solid, reliable piece of machinery that lifts loads, carries heavy weights, and does it in all kinds of good conditions.
It's got a great big fuselage. You can pack lots of troops and equipment in it. It truly is a versatile machine for the military operator.
The Chinook is undoubtedly the greatest transport helicopter ever, and it gets 8th place. At number 7 is a helicopter that everyone knows. It's the Jet Ranger.
What I like about the Jet Ranger is that it's got style.
It's a bit like a classic car, you know, it's a child of the 60s, really.
The Jet Ranger is probably one of the most attractive machines that's ever been designed and built. Yes.
The Jet Ranger is one of the greatest helicopters because it was the first civil helicopter that looked nice.
It was designed by a designer, not by a aircraft person. And they just created this outside mold line and then went out and flew it and started selling them like hotcakes.
Since it first flew, Bell has sold more than 4,500 Jet Rangers, making it the most prolific civilian helicopter on the planet. With energy-absorbing landing gear and seats, rupture-resistant fuel cells, and over 54 million trouble-free flight hours, it's also the safest helicopter ever. Not bad for something that started out as a failure.
Bell Helicopter had designed or developed the Jet Ranger in 1961 as a light observation helicopter for the U.S. Army. It actually lost the contract that went to Hughes with the OH-6, but Bell then, they moved forward and they developed the Jet Ranger into a commercial variant.
The Jet Ranger has been brilliant for executive use as a private helicopter and for civil applications. However, the interesting thing was that after they had built a whole lot of civil versions of it, the military came back again and they ordered the helicopter as the Bell Kiowa.
It's not all death and destruction. The Ranger's ability to fly at over 120 miles an hour to a range of almost 430 miles has made it excellent for scenic tours and construction, news gathering and law enforcement. Truly a Ford of the skies.
What is its weakness? I would have to say now it's its age. It's an old, very old design, mid-60s design. The engine is a mid-60s concept engine. It's not particularly fast, and it's not the most comfortable helicopter in the back.
Slightly over-complex and unnecessarily clever in places it didn't need to be. But it conjures up, it is the image of a helicopter in millions of people's minds.
It brought a new style to helicopters. It made them an attractive proposition for executive operators and for commercial users of helicopters in a way that had never happened prior to the aircraft arriving.
Although a #1 bestseller, it only makes our number 7 due to its old design and cramped conditions. At number 6 is a long-range helicopter that can fly in any type of weather. It is the Sea King.
When you see it coming over the horizon, you know the cavalry have arrived.
Well, obviously, if the most powerful person in the world can fly on a Sea King, then the aircraft is good enough for anyone.
The Sea King is a really versatile helicopter. It combines range, it combines physical lifting capacity, and it combines a large fuselage which can carry troops, can carry a lot of equipment, and can be changed quickly by an operator from one role to another.
The Sea King was designed for US Navy shipboard operations. It first flew an incredible 46 years ago.
The Sea King was really the first helicopter of its kind, turbine-powered, twin-engine, all-weather capability. Nothing else out there could match it.
For its life on the ocean wave, the Sea King had some innovative design features.
It was also the first aircraft to have a blade fold capability, which made them portable on ships. It also had a tail fold capability, which was the first helicopter to have that as well. The Sea King is also unique in shape because it has the boat hull shape to it. The aircraft can actually land in water if required.
But the Sea King's special features weren't only on the outside.
The aircraft's got an autopilot that allows you to fly in any weather and establish yourself in a hover, even over the pitch-black sea.
When the aircraft was developed originally in 1959, it was basically developed for one thing, and that was detect, track, and destroy submarines.
The Sea King would hover and drop its sonar buoy down into the ocean and then wait and listen for submarines, sometimes for hours on end. Trying to hover for that length of time, often at night, was impossible to do. So, a sophisticated autopilot system was developed.
Hovering a helicopter is like balancing this pole. I want to make sure this stays vertical, so I need to keep looking at the top of this pole. So, if we start doing this, I can do this fairly easily. I'm now hovering, and I'm making small corrections all the time down here. Now, if we're going to do this in the middle of the night, over the ocean, we have no references. I can't see anything. The ocean is dark, the sky is dark, there's no horizon. The only thing I can do to simulate that is close my eyes. And that's what the Sea King has, is the stabilization system to keep this upright, if you will, over the ocean in the middle of the night.
The flight control system works by emitting Doppler radar and radio waves to detect the Sea King's position and automatically makes any adjustments to pitch, roll, and heading to keep the aircraft steady.
The Sea King is probably the most stable platform of all helicopters.
This superb stability has allowed the Sea King to excel in probably its most famous role, search and rescue.
When you are flying into the mountains at night in snow and poor weather, you want to feel safe, and the Sea King gives you the sense of security that you need to be able to go and rescue somebody from one of those dangerous situations.
Precision flying is the Sea King's forte, getting into tight situations in all types of weather with no room for error.
But when you compare the handling of this aircraft to more modern aircraft, what you tend to find is that it handles a bit more like a truck than a sports car. And when you're tucked up close against a cliff, actually what you don't want is a particularly fast response to control input. So when I'm flying this helicopter, I know exactly how it's going to respond, and actually it's perfect for what I want it to do. It's critical that you can hold a stable hover, because there's a brave guy on the end of that rescue winch who's putting his life in your hands while he tries to rescue somebody else. So if you make a mistake, the implications of that could be potentially fatal.
The greatest ever is going to put the Sea King to the test. Its crew is about to deliver a glass of champagne the hard way.
Smells good to me. Yeah.
Winchman Dixie will be lowered 60 meters below the aircraft and attempt to pour the fizz into a glass. Lieutenant Martin Lanny must position the Sea King alongside the rock face and hold a steady hover. This is a true test of precision flying.
Easy, easy. Right, 21, easy, easy. He's with him. He's now got the jumpers. He's just gone to put the Michael Schumacher.
Well, it is the ultimate search and rescue helicopter because she's a big, friendly beast, and you know where you stand with this aircraft.
If I was a yachtsman sitting in the middle of the sea and I saw the Sea King coming towards me, I'd have a great degree of confidence.
It's not the biggest, but it's large enough to put lots of casualties, troops or stores in. It's got fairly long range, up to about 5 hours flying. It's fast enough for the role that it's going to be used for. So although it's not at the cutting edge of all of those examples, it does everything well enough to make it excellent for purpose.
The Sea King's incredible robustness and flight controls have made it the ultimate search and rescue helicopter. It's the 6th greatest ever helicopter. We're halfway through our countdown of helicopters. So far, we've had heavy lift champions, machines that took helicopter design to new heights. But still to come, the fastest chopper on the planet and the most lethal helicopter ever built.
That's a real death machine. They say don't run away, you'll just die tired.
As we search for the greatest ever helicopter. We've another 5 machines to fly before we find out which one is the greatest ever. But first, a helicopter that can outrun any other. It's the Ferrari of the skies, and it's our number 5. It's the Westland Lynx.
It's the fastest production helicopter ever.
It's a marvellous aircraft to fly for many reasons. It's an extremely powerful aircraft. It's very agile, very manoeuvrable, and very responsive.
The Lynx is unique, really, in its field. It has changed the whole way that helicopter operators can use an aircraft in battle conditions.
The Lynx was designed during the Cold War to ambush tanks using its optically tracked TOW missiles.
Quite an expensive system. We always used to equate one missile as being the equivalent of firing a BMW M3.
But the deadly TOW missiles are just the beginning. It's the Lynx's incredible maneuverability that has made it such a formidable fighting machine.
The thing about the Lynx is that it is an advanced design, and a lot of thought has gone into the rotor head, which allow it to be extremely agile.
Its one-piece titanium rotor head is practically fused onto the main fuselage.
When a control input is made in a conventional helicopter, as you start to move, the rotor will tilt, and then a second or so later, the body will follow. With the Lynx, as you make the control input, and even quite a small control input, the actual fuselage and the head will move together as one piece.
The Lynx is one of the most agile helicopters ever made, but that's not its only distinction.
The Lynx is the fastest recorded helicopter ever. It holds the world speed record still.
At an amazing 200 miles an hour, the Lynx has held the world speed record for over 30 years.
Well, the main reason really why the aircraft is so fast is thanks to the Burt blade technology. Burt blade being the British experimental rotor profile. And as you can see from the blades behind me, on the end is a sort of paddle affair which helps the blades move faster.
The burp tip is basically a swept tip on the end of the rotor. It has very similar benefits that you have on the swept wings of conventional commercial airplanes that fly at high subsonic speeds. It reduces the drag. If you have less drag, then that same amount of power will allow you to get more speed.
Because of its speed and agility, the Lynx can do for military operators things that helicopters have not been able to do ever before.
But it's in the hands of the British Army's Blue Eagles display team that the Lynx really shows what it can do.
270, 270, go.
The greatest ever persuaded them to explain their most tricky maneuver, turning a helicopter upside down.
Loop, loop, go. The loop is the most difficult maneuver to get absolutely right because really the aircraft doesn't really want to do it. It's a real coordinated maneuver, coordinated with both the cyclic stick, with the pedals, and also the collective movement. So the old analogy of rubbing your head and patting your stomach really does come true when trying to fly the loop. I will raise the power lever gently back. All I then do is pull back as fast as I can on the stick, and the aircraft goes straight over on itself. Keep it coming round, back 6 to the slightly to the left, bit more pedal, round, power, and round we come. It's just really committing to the maneuver and ensuring that you go all the way back over the top and don't spend too much time upside down, otherwise you will just gently be sucked towards the ground.
Lynx, classic British excellence in its field.
The Lynx is like a lynx. It goes fast and it hits its prey quickly, and it's a really remarkable fighting machine.
It does everything that you want it to do and more, and I've never flown a helicopter that's better.
The Lynx's remarkable speed and agility make it a unique machine and earn it the title 5th greatest ever helicopter. At number 4 is a true giant of the skies. It's the largest, most powerful helicopter ever made. It's the MiL-26.
The MiL-26 is the gargantuan of the helicopters.
Everything is big. Even the pilots are big.
It is the largest, it is the most powerful helicopter that is out there. There is nothing that comes close to it.
It's huge. It's very, very capable, very simple. It was a Russian solution to a Russian problem.
The problem was how to transport nuclear missiles to remote Siberia during the Cold War. The answer was to build the largest helicopter in the world.
With a capability to lift 40,000 pounds, there is nothing that outlifts the Mi-26.
It's 40 meters long, 6.5 meters wide, as tall as 2 double-decker buses.
If you need to move something that's extremely heavy, above what a Chinook or what an aircraft can move, there's only one aircraft that you can turn to, and that is the Mi-26.
The MiL-26 can lift an incredible 20 tons, the equivalent of lifting 2 Chinooks at the same time, either externally or inside its cargo hold. It's the same size as a Hercules and large enough to fit 4 family cars or 100 parachutists, whatever your needs may be. With its huge payload, you need to do something extraordinary to lift it off the ground.
With the MiL-26, of course, the designers were faced with the problem of getting the maximum lift that they could, because it's a heavy helicopter and it has a heavy lift capability. And the answer to that was to put more blades onto the rotor hub.
The Mi-26 is the only 8-blades helicopter in the world. Each blade has a length of around 15 meters and with a weight of approximately 300 kilos.
And what gives those blades such enormous lift? The most powerful engines ever put on a helicopter.
Okay, here we are. the heart of the Mi-26. Two engines called D136 of 12,000 horsepower each. The fuel consumption is around 2.5 tons an hour, so that means around 3,000 liters. That's a lot of fuel, but there is quite a lot of horses to...
In fact, that's over 50 times more powerful than a Ferrari.
The size is huge, the size of the helicopter, the size of the engine is huge, but the size of what the helicopter can perform is huge too.
The mill was used in the cleanup of Chernobyl and today operates in some of the most hostile environments around the globe.
Welcome to the hugest helicopter cockpit of the hugest helicopter in the world.
It's big for a reason. It takes 2 pilots, an engineer, navigator, and loadmaster to fly this beast.
Of course, the Mil-26 comes with some problems for a Western operator. They've all been designed in Russian and they come with Russian instruction manuals. So it can be quite complicated converting to operating an aircraft like the Mil-26 in a non-Russian environment.
Would we have ever built one in the West? Probably not. We couldn't justify the expense of designing and producing and certifying it, whether for civil or military use.
It's very exciting to fly it because I think the main reason is because it's the biggest one of the world.
Well, I think it's like a great big Russian bear, and it really moves the equipment and it gives a lot of muscle.
Mil-26, summing it up, a machine to move mountains.
The Mil-26 is definitely the most powerful helicopter ever, but unless you have a job big enough, it's just too expensive to run, so it gets 4th place. At number 3 is an aircraft that has changed the face of warfare. It's the world's deadliest helicopter. It's the Apache Longbow.
Apache is the ultimate fighting machine.
It's a good, efficient aircraft with really nasty, efficient weapons. It'll ruin your whole day if it's coming after you.
The Apache is not meant to look nice, but underneath its ugly outer shell is the most sophisticated helicopter ever designed.
As requirements for helicopters have evolved over the years, this has really driven the requirement for mission equipment, for avionics, far more than it has driven the requirements for how fast or how far a helicopter can fly.
Each Apache Longbow is fitted with over $12 million worth of avionics equipment, all intent on getting the kill.
It has very highly integrated electronics and optics to let you fly the aircraft in the middle of the night like it was broad daylight and go out and shoot tanks. And that's really pretty spectacular.
Its mast-mounted radar and nose-mounted day and night vision systems allow the pilot to clearly detect and identify targets up to 5 miles away. And in order to accurately aim his weapons, the pilot relies on his integrated headset.
Once we have the helmet on, then we actually take what's called the helmet display unit and attach it to the right side of our helmet. Once it's attached, what it does is it rotates around, sits on my right cheek, and then this little cathode ray tube, basically a little TV screen, slides up and into place so that I can actually get information displayed from my night vision sensor. So that when I turn my head left and right, up and down, I can actually see where I'm looking at with my night vision sensor, and additionally, it gives me information as far as a aiming point with my crosshairs inside there, so when I turn my head, I can actually put my crosshairs on a target, squeeze the trigger, and then rounds will impact on a target.
But this precision sighting system is nothing without the weapons it controls.
The Longbow Apache has 3 main weapon systems on board of it. It's got the 30mm chain gun, which is right underneath the co-pilot's station. If I'm attacked by something out my right door, I can literally turn my head, look out to the right and down, and squeeze the trigger, and rounds will burst on target. And it just follows my line of sight. No matter where I'm looking, left, right, up, down, it's going to follow my head movement. It's got a range of about 4,200 meters. It's got a rate of fire about 650 rounds per minute. This is a rocket pod, and it shoots what's called 2.75-inch folding fin arrow rockets. If we have troops in the open that we just want to make them button up, stop shooting this kind of thing, we can shoot rockets at them. It's not necessarily going to go exactly to the point where you're trying to aim it. It's going to go in that general area.
Of all the weapons, it's the Hellfire missiles that are the most deadly.
The Hellfire missile system is our primary weapon system on board the Longbow Apache.
With the help of the U.S. Army Apache Squadron at Fort Rucker, Alabama, the greatest ever got to see the sheer firepower of these Hellfire missiles. Each missile costs a whopping $85,000 US, and the Apache carries 8 of them. They're guided by a laser beam, which is programmed to the crosshairs on the pilot's sights. With the help of its fire control system, the aircraft scans the battlefield, identifying up to 1,000 separate targets. It prioritizes the most dangerous and initiates an attack. The pilot then marks the target with his laser beam and fires the missile. All this can be done in under 10 seconds.
3, 2, 1, fire.
Once fired, the missile accelerates beyond Mach 1. It takes less than 40 seconds to destroy a target 5 miles away. The Apache's awesome firepower has made it one of the most feared weapons ever.
I suppose for the soldier on the ground, the one thing that he fears most of all is seeing an attack helicopter coming over the top of those trees. And the Apache is the one helicopter I would not like to see coming towards me.
And that's a real death machine. They say, don't run away, you'll just die tired.
You look at the 3 different weapon systems we have on board and the different roles that we can perform in combat, it is without a doubt the most lethal attack helicopter in the world.
The Apache is certainly the most lethal helicopter ever, but it comes with a hefty price tag, $25 million. It's the 3rd greatest ever helicopter. If you think a flying car is a thing of the future, you need to think again. Our 2nd greatest helicopter is the amazing Robinson R-22.
The Robinson Revolution has made a simple helicopter, which is finally a practical helicopter for the individual.
This has been a dream ever since World War II, that you could have a personal flying vehicle which would do exactly the same thing as your automobile. That has come true with the R-22.
The 2-seat R-22 and its big brother, the 4-seat R-44, were the brainchild of one man, Frank Robinson, a bored helicopter designer who in 1973 set out to bring flying to the masses.
At that time, I was already 43, and it did bother me that I had not really started what I thought would be my life's work. My real life's work was to design and build a small, personal type of helicopter. So I decided to just go ahead and gamble everything and give it a try. It would be easier to accept if I knew that I had tried and failed than if I had never tried at all.
It was the right decision to take, and Robinson annual sales now exceed $200 million.
The guy is a total genius and a revolutionary. He has made a revolution in helicopters.
The revolution was in the simplicity of the design.
I visualized the type of helicopter that I would want myself, how I would want to use it, and I wanted a helicopter that required very, very little maintenance, and one that was much lower in cost than existing helicopters.
What Frank Robinson did was strip away everything that was unnecessary. The R-22 is so lightweight that it can run on an inexpensive piston engine, usually used in light airplanes. This is set to draw only 75% of its total power, making it very reliable and long-lasting without compromising performance. It can fly faster, travel further, and carry more than any other in its class, earning it a unique place amongst helicopters.
What has the Robinson got that no other helicopter has? Commercial success at this end of the market.
We compare just the sheer numbers of aircraft that are delivered by Robinson, we're talking 17 a week. If we compare that with other turbine helicopters out there, we might be talking 1 up to maybe 3 a week.
Frank Robinson has now sold 6,000 helicopters, R-22s and R-44s. That's an unbelievable record for this end of the market. No one else has come close to that volume of sales.
It's affordable, it's reliable, it's efficient, it's fast, it's practical. It's about the first time a helicopter has been seriously practical as personal transport.
The R-22 slashed the price of a helicopter to a quarter of what it was before. At just $185,000, it's the same price as a top-end Mercedes, and that's made flying possible for practically anyone.
I designed it not as a trainer, but I designed it as a personal helicopter. But it's also turned out to be a good trainer. It produces a very good quality pilot. It's not necessarily the easiest helicopter to learn to fly, but as you learn to fly it, you're developing the best habits.
The Robinson R-22 is today the most popular training aircraft for new pilots.
This really is the marker stone of what the personal helicopter is going to be. Practical, reliable, efficient, easy, simple, just brilliant.
Robinson helicopters now operate in over 60 countries around the globe, making it arguably one of the most ubiquitous helicopters ever. It's our second greatest helicopter. We've counted down 9 incredible machines in our top 10 search to find the greatest ever helicopter. But which one gets first place? We're about to find out. In our search to find the greatest ever helicopter, we've gone through 9 groundbreaking machines, all of them incredible helicopters, but none as revolutionary as our #1. Flown into battles the world over and immortalized in movies such as Apocalypse Now. It's nearly 50 years old, and it is the icon of helicopters. It's the Bell UH-1.
There is no other helicopter that is as recognizable as the Huey.
If you think helicopter, most people will instantly have a vision of the UH-1.
The Huey, which of course is the UH-1, and that's how it got its name, was the archetypal Vietnam helicopter.
The Huey is the machine that we rode to war. It took us in and brought us back safely.
The UH-1 first appeared in Vietnam in 1963. From an initial order of 60 helicopters, the U.S. Army went on to deploy over 7,000.
My name is Steve Vermillion. I'm a retired Army officer after 26 years. My role on the UH-1 was initially as a co-pilot in Vietnam, and then an aircraft commander.
My name's Burl Dooley, and I was a door gunner on UH-1 in Vietnam, 1963. My training as a door gunner consisted of giving me an M2 carbine, flying out over the Mekong River and putting some bullets into the river. And then I was a trained door gunner.
What is impressive for me about the Huey is that you can do anything with it. It's like a flying truck. It was built around an open box, and so you can take the doors off and you can put anything that you like inside a Huey. And that made it hugely versatile when it was operating in Vietnam and other battle conditions.
The Huey was the first mass-produced helicopter with a turbine engine. This nearly doubled the speed it could fly at and meant it could lift nearly twice as much payload.
The Huey is very simplistic in design, but it was a very rugged helicopter. In Vietnam, the U.S. Army lost only 1 helicopter for every 8,000 missions that were flown during the conflict.
The Huey's toughness is legendary.
UH-1 took a lot of damage, and we keep on flying.
You could take multiple hits in the rotor system, the fuselage, unless it hit a major structural component, it would just keep flying.
The feeling everyone had is something bad always happened to the other person, never happened to you.
When you get out of the helicopter and you begin to inspect it, then you start seeing where the holes and the exit points were. Say, damn, that was within about an inch of my head. That's real close. But here again, big sky, little bullet concept. They have to hit you to kill you.
Probably the most iconic of the Huey's features is its sound.
Oh, the quick answer is it sounds like the sound of freedom.
The noise from the UH-1 dominantly comes because of its two-bladed rotor, and those are really almost shock waves that are coming off there.
Today, helicopters are built to be a little more friendly. They make them quieter. They design the blades so that there's not near as much noise. The Huey was really designed and built in the 1950s, and back then, the evolution of the helicopter was still fairly new. So they hadn't really designed the blade to be quiet. They just designed the thing to fly.
Back in Vietnam, the troops could hear it coming from miles away and know that some form of aid or support was coming to them. Anytime I hear that whop whop, it just says, there's my brother flying.
Today, the greatest ever is giving Steve and Burl the chance to fly once again in a UH-1.
Looking good.
This one looks in a lot better shape than the last couple I flew.
Doesn't have bullet holes in it. All the parts are on it. That's good. That's great. Now, the last time I flew a Huey was 20 years ago. To be able to fly it today will be a special thrill. It's a coming home. I mean, it's like when I quit flying the Huey, I lost a family member, and now I'm being rejoined with a family member.
Now, for the first time in 20 years, Steve gets his chance to take the controls.
Okay, I got the controls again, thank you. Oh yeah, this feels great. You know, it's the sights and the sounds and the smell, and you know, it doesn't bring back negative memories, it brings back positive memories. And being bonded once again between man and machine.
The terrain we're flying over is, you know, very similar to some of the stuff we were flying over in Vietnam. Brings back a lot of memories. As a door gunner, I'd really be concentrating right out here and to the back of the helicopter. Again, that's where I'm going to receive fire if I receive it at all. Even after 42 years, it all comes back. I think I could still do a pretty good job as a door gunner if I had to.
The Huey is, of all these helicopters, the greatest of all time.
The Huey is a classic, and I think it always will be.
What's the most remarkable thing about the UH-1? Its longevity, its simplicity, and probably the people who flew it.
I didn't expect to be back in a Huey again until they threw my ashes out over some place yet to be determined.
The helicopter is great. It can do any job assigned to it, and it's very, very it's an outstanding helicopter.
If I were reactivated today and sent to Iraq, I'd like to have a Huey.
With a life spanning 50 years and counting, the Huey has prevailed in conflict, been immortalized in movies, and embraced in the hearts and minds of those who've flown it. It is the greatest ever helicopter. Get ready for a show with machines blown right out of proportion. Tonight, the greatest ever gets up close and quite personal with the biggest and most powerful pieces of equipment the world has ever seen.
It's like power personified.
It's not just the size of a house, it's the size of an office block.
But we won't just look at them, we'll test them. We'll use them as crushers, and we'll even shoot at them. All for us to identify the greatest ever diggers.
They're absolutely fascinating. They're engineering marvels. They're absolutely superb.
We traveled the world and brought together a panel of experts to help us with the task. Their job isn't going to be easy, but it's certainly going to be fun.
Even though the task seems larger than the machines themselves, let's get to it right now.
Wasting no time, we begin our countdown with the world's biggest land machine, the Bagger 293.
The Bagger 293 is a bucket wheel excavator. It's the size of an ocean liner on land.
It's kind of an abstract type of machine. It actually kind of looks like a small mobile city with a giant buzzsaw attached to the front end.
Bagger 293 is in the Guinness Book of World Records because it's the biggest land-bound machine ever.
This German giant weighs in at a whopping 13 million kilos. It's over 210 meters long and 90 meters tall, and works in the coal mines of northern Germany.
What sets the 293 apart from the other machines is the sheer size of it. I mean, this machine can produce up to 12 tons of material. It's spitting out 10 mid-sized cars in a second.
The Bagger has 18 massive buckets, all working 24/7 on a 22-meter diameter wheel. Each bucket can pick up 7,000 kilograms of coal in one scoop. This machine is designed around pure power and has one purpose: to dig. Unlike most excavators, the Bagger doesn't just dig and load trucks. It has its own unique conveyor belt system.
It is far cheaper to convey material than to truck it. A truck weighs about as much as it carries, whereas a conveyor weighs a lot less in comparison to what it can produce and can carry.
The Bagger 293 feeds almost 50 kilometers of conveyor belts at the Hambach mine. The coal is then put onto trains and sent to power stations across Germany.
The coal is used for power stations. We produce yearly about 40 million tons of coal, and about 30 million go for energy into power stations.
Bagger 293 is powered by 20,000 kilowatts, enough electricity to run a small city. It draws its juice directly from the power plants it supplies. Although this giant extracts enough coal to power 300,000 homes daily, it's run by a very small team.
On this excavator, only 5 people are working. And with these 5 people in 3 shifts, that means 15 people around the clock, we produce this high capacity.
This may be a small crew, but they have to be fit. The Bagger has 5 levels, 2,500 steps, and walkways totaling over 3 kilometers. It's not unusual for the team to walk up to 10 kilometers a shift.
I think there are not that many postmen in normal towns which have to walk that long per day.
Bucket wheel excavators like the 293 are built to work specifically in only one location. But these machines are so good that it's not unusual for them to clear an entire coalfield, forcing them to move on and graze elsewhere. However, they move at only 50 meters per hour, so this is easier said than done. Hundreds of people have to be mobilized, and the operation can sometimes take months, if not years.
Bucket wheel excavator is, under certain conditions, the most productive way to extract huge masses of material.
This machine, the Bagger 293 bucket wheel excavator, is the biggest earth mover in the world. But with earth movers, bigger doesn't always necessarily mean better.
They definitely have the size, they've got the weight, they've got the productivity, but they're somewhat isolated.
Other machines are more flexible, more versatile. You can move them around, you can do slightly different jobs with them. But with a bucket wheel, it does one job, and that's what it does. It will not do anything else.
The size and the productivity of the 293 make it the king of the diggers in terms of mass. But because of its sheer cost and lack of mobility, the bagger only gets to number 10 on our list. We've got 9 more diggers still to come, including the machine that helped launch man into space. The countdown of the greatest ever diggers began on a massive note with the bagger, and we're staying in Germany for number 9. Diving deep underground is the Gabi 1 tunnel boring machine.
All the other machines work on the surface of the Earth. Now, to actually go under the Earth is a total different ball game.
At number 10 was the world's largest. Next up is the longest machine on Earth. Gabi 1 is state-of-the-art and is working on a very special project.
The Gabi 1 is working in the Gotthard project in Switzerland. It's not the biggest machine ever built, but it's maybe the most sophisticated because it's a system about 440 meters in length and 9.58 diameters in width.
This machine has a massive task: to cut through 90 kilometers of solid granite, probably the hardest rock on the planet. It will take 6 years for Gabi 1 to inch its way through and burrow a tunnel that's almost double the length of the Channel Tunnel. The completed project will allow trains to travel at speeds of up to 250 kilometers per hour, deep under Switzerland's picturesque Gotthard Pass.
The whole system weighs about 3,200 tons. It is propulsed by 10 single motors and has a performance of 5,000 horses. So what you have under the earth there is not just a drilling machine, but it's a really powerful construction system.
Gabi 1 is the most technologically advanced boring machine in the world. Its cutting head, located right at the front, is made up of 67 steel disc cutters, constructed from a top-secret combination of tungsten carbide and ultra-hard steel. These cutters slice through the rock, and the rotating movement of the head pushes the waste through the machine and onto a conveyor belt.
This machine is capable to move 10 meters per day in average. And in good condition, it moves 40 meters.
They're spectacular machines. And Gabi is no exception to that. It has one of the most demanding jobs of any of the tunnel boring machines to date. And yes, it is special.
Gabi 1 is digging a tunnel that would have been impossible only a few years ago. This is the Herrenknecht factory in Schwanau, southern Germany, the birthplace of Gabi 1, where ultra-hard steel components and state-of-the-art technology made this project possible.
It's a mixture of different things, integrating nearly everything which is nowadays technical on the market, from the hydraulics to computerized controls, steering technology. All these things come together in these machines, because basically up-to-date TBM is more or less, meanwhile, an underground factory for building a tunnel.
The other way of tunnelling is essentially to have people with blasting and drills rather than a machine which rotates and cuts a tube out, which this does. It's better than that because you don't need explosives and you also don't put human beings at risk. So it's a better type of machine, and this particular one is obviously the latest state-of-the-art of that type compared to other methods of tunnelling.
The benefits of a tunnel boring machine like the Gabi 1 are numerous, but there are also disadvantages.
The tunnel boring machine is a system, and systems are, of course, not that flexible as single machines like excavators, for example.
You can't just make a standard machine that'll go through any type of rock or any type of strata. You've got to design and build one for that particular job. So that's a disadvantage. So each one is a limited machine for a limited purpose. So in that sense, you could compare it to other ones which are much more versatile machines in this movie.
This machine may be presently rewriting the history books, but as mass production is too expensive and inefficient, Gabi 1 only stands at number 9 on our top 10 list. Number 8 on our list of the greatest ever diggers, a machine with one massive appetite: the Silver Spade.
This shovel kind of reminds me of this, like a large dinosaur, grazing on overburden in a coal mine.
This mechanical dinosaur is over 60 meters tall and weighs an incredible 6.4 million kilos.
It's great because it's lasted so long. Show me a car that'll last 30, 40 years and be used 24 hours a day and 7 days a week.
In its 40 years of hard labor at the Mahoning Valley Mine in Ohio, the Silver Spade has moved over 9 billion kilos of rock, the equivalent of a mountain 1.5 kilometers high and a whopping 300 meters wide.
It was probably one of the first super machines ever built. If there was a Hall of Fame for stripping shovels, it's a candidate to be in the Hall of Fame.
This super machine has fans across the world, and its influence has even reached to the moon.
The 8 crawlers mounted on 4 corners was the basic inspiration of the crawler transporters currently in use at Kennedy Space Center. Literally, stripping shovel technology was used to build these transporters for man's quest of space.
The huge 6-meter wide, 6-meter deep bucket hits the digging face with a force of 500,000 kilos and can eat up over 150,000 kilos of earth in a single sitting.
It's very spectacular to watch the bucket going up the bank with the dust coming from the rock caused by the teeth. To me, that's the most spectacular of all earth-moving machines.
The stripping shovel strips. It doesn't load, as it would crush any truck it tried to fill. It simply strips the earth to one side to expose the coal seams below. Its awesome power is down to an ingenious system based on, of all things, the human leg.
It was first of 2 only built by Bucyrus that had a thing called a knee action crowd, which is the mechanism which actually holds the bucket that it digs by.
On the Silver Spade, the part of the machine that actually holds the bucket, the dipper handle, acts like a human knee and swings backward and forward. The mechanical knee only hits the digging face at 8 kilometers per hour, but exerts a massive force. The spade has an incredible 1.5 million kilos of ballast just to stop it from falling over. But despite its colossal size and weight, it's a very simple machine to operate.
You have swing pedals on your feet, a left swing and a right swing. We have a controller in each hand, a crowd and retract controller in our left hand, and a hoist controller in our right hand. And they are all electrically controlled. It moves very, very easy. You feel like you have a lot of power in your hands at times, a lot of power.
Tom may have all the power, but he doesn't work on his own. The Silver Spade has an oiler continuously lubricating its parts. Without the oiler, the machine would seize up, as it has 700,000 separate parts. The crawler tracks alone require 23,000 liters of oil to move smoothly, and because of its age, this veteran of the coalface needs regular checkups, as well as constant care.
We check the bucket prior to each shift, make sure that we don't have any missing dipper teeth or any tooth bases cracked, and the condition of the door and so forth.
The most dangerous part of this daily inspection is climbing the 60-meter high boom.
When you ascend on our boom, you make absolutely sure of your footing and your handholds to make sure that you don't slip. And it can be overwhelming at times to look down, straight down at how far you are. It's quite an experience to be up there. It is a good exercise. In fact, I used to take a lot of pride in how fast I could get up there. That probably wasn't the right approach to take, but as you get a little older, you need to rest a time or two before you get to stop.
The magnificent Silver Spade is the last of a breed. Stripping shovels are being phased out and replaced by machines that can cope better with deeper deposits.
The disadvantage of this type of machine is that it is quite restricted when it comes to its working area.
These machines are nice, but they're almost dinosaurs. And the Silver Spade is the last of its kind. I'd not have it in the top 10 compared with the other machines. It's old.
The Silver Spade will continue to strip coal until it's too expensive to fix.
If the machine would cease operations, I would probably take retirement. I don't see myself going to any other machines or anything like that. I feel like I've reached the pinnacle with this machine.
The Silver Spade has proved its worth over the decades, but because it is a machine that belongs in the past, it's stuck at number 8. At number 7, the world's most powerful and biggest scraper, the Caterpillar 657E.
The line has been around almost as long as all trucks and bulldozers. They're like the elder statesmen in our top 10 list.
657 is the biggest scraper around at the moment. And compared with previous scrapers, it's just that much more reliable because it's got new engines, it's got new control technologies.
This is a rather nice, clever, very useful machine.
It's like power personified because it's right there. You can reach out and touch it.
The secret behind the power of this particular scraper? 2 engines, one in the front, one in the back, simultaneously pulling and pushing the machine, a combined total of almost 1,000 horsepower.
It's a bit like a piece of toast and butter, you know. Put a bit too much butter on, so you scrape it off. In other words, it's the scraping motion. It's taking a scraping of the earth off, transporting it, and putting it down as a layer somewhere else.
This machine doesn't just scrape, it's much more versatile. It also digs, loads, carries, and dumps huge amounts of earth without the assistance of any other machines.
Scraper's a very, very efficient machine for moving dirt over a short distance. Now, if you're building a road, building a dam or something like that, you want to move dirt from here to there. Scraper's going to do it, and it's going to do it very efficiently.
The world's most powerful scraper may be about pure brute force, but the secret of its digging power resides in its reinforced steel blade, or cutting edge. This cutting edge can last anywhere from 400 to 500 working hours before it has to be replaced.
The cutting edge is the bottom part of the bowl. It's the part that actually goes into the ground. When the bowl is lowered into the ground, the cutting edge is the leading edge of the scraper that goes into the material and forces the material up into the bowl. The blade is about 2.5 inches thick. This doesn't have to be sharp. The sheer force of the machine will load the machine with no problem at all.
When digging conditions are too difficult for a single scraper, the 657E buddies up with another machine in what is known as a push-pull operation. The scrapers simply hook bales and, believe it or not, one pushes while the other pulls.
You come to the job in the morning, you come back in the afternoon, and the landscape has totally changed. It's absolutely phenomenal what these machines will do.
Scrapers have worked non-stop since 1922 and have even seen action in numerous wars. With their speed and maneuverability, they're perfect for the construction of roads, ramps, and landing strips. In Vietnam, the scraper found a rather more unusual role.
I was 18 years old, wet behind the ears, and one night we were done moving dirt for the day, and could hear some shooting going on somewhere nearby, not too far away, and I got my curiosity up.
The year, 1968. Philip Ory and a colleague got in their machines and headed for the source of the gunfight. There, they found a platoon under fire. They loaded the men into the bowl portion of the scraper, protected by the thick metal sides, and got the men out safely whilst under enemy fire.
I ended up being in the right place at the right time with a land scraper of all things, and was able to get these guys out of danger. And that's just something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.
Inside plate is like armor plate.
The thick steel construction of the scraper saved the soldiers' lives and made Philip Ory a hero. But was it luck, poor marksmanship, or the scraper's tank-like hull that got everyone out safely? The greatest ever set out to find the answer.
It's blocked ammunition. Oh, okay.
It's armor-piercing shell.
Ready, Kevin?
A marksman using an AK-47 rifle with armor-piercing bullets will put a section of the scraper's side to the test. These bullets are designed to go through armored personnel carriers and tanks.
I'd hate to have been on the receiving end of that one.
Well, you either hit it or scared it real bad because it fell down.
I don't know. The one you were shooting at over in Vietnam, that was painted green. That may have had a difference. Ooh, nice clean hole.
Yeah, let's flip it over and see if it went right through. Not even a mark. Not even a dent.
Wow.
Okay.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Built bigger and better than the scraper Ori used in Vietnam, the 657E is without doubt the all-time scraper champion, but its uses are extremely limited.
I wouldn't put the scraper in general high up on the list, simply because it is a relatively simple machine. It's not as sophisticated or as complex as some of the other machines in the list.
Fast and powerful, the 657E removes great amounts of soil. However, as scrapers were designed for digging a few meters deep and moving only soft material like sand and gravel, it's the number 7 on our list of the greatest ever diggers. Our next digger is all about mobility and flexibility. Number 6, the Letourneau L2350 wheel loader.
The great thing about the L2350 is it's the ultimate four-wheel drive. Forget Hummers, they're toys. If you want a four-wheel drive, the L2350 is the one.
A wheel loader is essentially a machine on 4 wheels with an engine and a driver's cab, and at the front of it, a bucket. This particular wheel loader is designed to work in very large mines.
The Letourneau wheel loaders are one of mining industry's kind of jack of all trades, with a kind of a top speed right around 11 miles per hour, slow by automotive standards, but pretty fast for earth-moving machines. It can get there faster, get the job done, and go off and do something else.
This four-wheel drive mammoth is all about raw power. It can lift loads of 73,000 kilos, the equivalent in weight of 30 cars, to heights of 8 meters, and fill a 240-ton truck in less than 1 minute. This is all made possible by a unique design feature.
The L2350 is articulated. That is, the wheels don't actually steer, it's the frame that steers. It pivots.
Being articulated means the loader can turn on a short radius, allowing it to do its job much quicker. Each tire measures close to 4 meters, weighs 7,000 kilos, and has a load capacity of 150 tons. With a 16-centimeter thickness, there's enough steel and rubber in each of these wheels to make 700 car tires. And to avoid overheating, the tires are all filled with nitrogen, a gas, unlike air, that remains cool under tremendous pressures and extreme friction.
The tires on the L2350 were a big challenge. They weren't available at the time. Firestone actually built these and designed them specifically for the L2350. I think everyone was surprised that the tires have done as well as they have. This L2350's been in operation for about 3 years now. They've been through at least 3 sets of tires, and at a cost of about $60,000 a tire, but that cost is offset by the increased production due to the size of the loader. So it's a pretty good trade-off.
The versatile and mobile L2350 is without a doubt the best digger on the market today.
If you're a multimillionaire with a large plot of land and you want to build an Olympic-sized swimming pool, the L2350 is a machine to go for.
But if you're not after a big pool, there are drawbacks.
The disadvantage is, though, that it can only take material that is of a certain looseness. It can't go into solid rock unless it's blasted and so on. The other disadvantage would be, of course, that it's on rubber wheels. And you can only, unlike Caterpillar tracks, you can only run the machines in certain conditions of ground.
Because of the cost of the tires and lack of adaptability, this giant of the digging fraternity is stuck at number 6. We're halfway through our greatest ever countdown. So far, we've had the world's biggest and the world's longest. But still to come, a machine that is afraid of nothing. We've seen 5 machines that are all world champions in their respective categories, and there are still 5 more to go before we find out the greatest ever. We continue our countdown with the newest and most modern machine on our list, number 5. The Bucyrus 8200 walking dragline, aka Liberty.
It's a relatively simple thing that does a fantastically large, significant job. If the conditions are fine, very cheaply. It's one of the cheapest forms of earth moving.
Liberty is big. It's got a 355-foot boom, and it hangs a 77 cubic yard bucket on the end of that. It's big. You wouldn't want to run it over your foot.
I see tremendous grace when I see that bucket going out and coming back. I mean, I almost see a fisherman casting a line. I see an extraordinary grace for a machine that's 6 and 7 stories tall, going out and pulling dirt back and dumping it 200 yards from the point of dig to the point of dump. I think it's extraordinary. It's like a mascot for North Dakota.
Liberty can move 115,000 kilos of earth over a distance of 180 meters in less than 60 seconds. And the way it does it couldn't be more simple.
A dragline works by having a bucket on the end of a steel rope, which goes to the top of a boom or jib. Then it uses a drag rope to pull the bucket up a slope and fill it. The engineering that goes onto them is absolutely amazing. And then, although the actual concept is rather simple, it's very clever.
Simple and efficient, this walking dragline is perfect for coal mining and has been a boon at the Center Mine in North Dakota.
Here, most of the electricity is generated by lignite coal. The dragline actually uncovers the overburden or the dirt that's above the coal, and in our operation that can vary anywhere from 30 feet up to 100 feet of dirt over the coal seams. So the dragline, the 8200, the Liberty dragline, is part of the whole process. In fact, it's the beginning of the process.
Draglines come in all sizes, and what makes Liberty one of the most unique of this breed is that it actually walks.
Liberty is what's called a walking dragline. It has a tub, and it literally drags itself as it moves, as opposed to a track machine.
The reason that Liberty is a walking machine rather than one on tracks is because of the sheer weight of the machine. Liberty weighs 9 million pounds, and to get that kind of weight spread out over tracks is physically impossible to do, and so the dragline designers decided to set the machine on a large round disc called a tub, and then to move it, they designed this walking system.
A walking dragline doesn't really walk, it hops. A bit like a kangaroo, it hops. It goes backwards. The cams come round, the feet drop down, and then it lifts itself up at an angle on the edge of this tub. That slides back and drops down, and the feet come round on the cams and so on. They should be called hopping draglines, but it would sound a bit odd, I think.
The principles behind Liberty are simple, but this animal is loaded with state-of-the-art technology.
The potential for technology on this machine is just starting to be explored. The dragline world has entered the information age, and through the remote diagnostic system, we can get technical support from any place in the world, and it is incredible.
Compared with the other draglines, it's a quantum leap in design and technology.
Liberty is certainly technologically advanced and exceptionally powerful, but its appeal is not universal.
The weak points of walking dragline is that they are limited in their application. You don't see walking draglines putting sewers in the street, for example. You won't have a street left.
Liberty does the job in North Dakota, but has little use elsewhere. And due to its size and weight, this walking dragline can only operate in certain ideal conditions. For that reason, it sits at number 5. Our 4th greatest ever digger has taken mining technology to a new level, a monster of disproportionate dimensions. Here is the Terex RH400 hydraulic excavator.
It's the biggest machine of its type. Nobody else has built anything as big or as powerful as that. The Terex RH400 is a pioneer. It's pushed the boundaries of technology.
The RH400 is certainly the most modern machine, using modern hydraulics and controls.
Terex, one of the world leaders in ultra-large mining hydraulic excavators, designed and built this machine so it could lift a staggering 85,000 kilos of earth in a single scoop. That's like lifting 20 elephants.
It takes, you know, giant bites out of the face of the earth. It's fantastic.
The RH400 works in one of the most inhospitable regions on the planet, the Alberta oil sands in northwest Canada, and was designed specifically for that area.
It's a very difficult material to dig. It changes its consistency between the seasons. In the wintertime, it tends to break out into big pieces. That's difficult for the machine to handle. And the summertime, the oil sand is like a putty. And it's a very heavy push all the way through for the bucket to penetrate into the material.
The key to this oil sand busting machine is its huge bucket and strong arms, powered by the digging world's largest hydraulic system.
The RH400 is a hydraulic excavator, meaning it uses the power of hydraulic fluid, fluid power, if you will, as opposed to a cable shovel, which uses cable or wire rope.
Hydraulic systems allow machines like the RH400 to lift heavy loads by applying pressure to a small piston and transmitting fluid to the larger piston, therefore increasing the force in the most economic way.
The science of hydraulics is a very complicated thing, but I'm going to try and demonstrate it quite simply today. Here, we're going to show very simply how it produces a linear form of movement by simply creating pressure at one end and transmitting that via the fluid, the liquid, to a cylinder there, which at the end of the cylinder creates the movement. So if I press here, I'm putting pressure on there, and that's being transmitted right down the tube, and there's the movement at the end, which could work a machine or whatever.
Generally, the more hydraulic pressure a machine has, the more power it has. And the hydraulic pumps of the RH400 set a new record for excavators. It can load one of the world's biggest trucks with only 4 scoops.
You could compare the RH400 machine to a living entity. When you look at the life fluid as being the hydraulic oil, the heart of the hydraulic system would be the hydraulic pumps. There's 8 main pumps on the RH400, producing about 920 liters a minute. So it gives you a total flow or circulation of oil of about 7,500 liters a minute to move the bucket and boom attachment.
Hydraulics is one thing, but the RH400 has a lot more to brag about.
It's also very mobile compared to a lot of other machines. If it has to move to another part of the mine, there are hydraulic motors that work the tracks, and they are relatively efficient and fast.
This beast of a machine runs on massive tracks. Each one of its 96 links weighs over 1,000 kilos, bringing the total weight of the machine to a whopping 1 million kilos. However, the rules of physics suggest this kind of weight and unpredictable surfaces shouldn't actually work, and the RH400 should sink. The oil sands are like quicksand in the summer, but the RH400 doesn't sink, as its tracks self-regulate their tension according to ground conditions.
We're using the largest components on the RH400 for pumps and valves and hoses and engines. We're on the cutting edge of the technologies, and it's difficult to go any further with it.
Its disadvantage is that the hydraulics work under very high pressure, so therefore extreme safety precautions have to be taken whenever working on the maintenance of the machine.
The RH400 can sometimes do the impossible, but it isn't the most practical machine due to its immense size. Its hydraulic system is the world's most powerful, but it's also the world's most complicated and dangerous to service. For these reasons, this digger is bogged down at number 4. The countdown continues, from the world's most powerful to the world's largest. Standing at number 3, the Komatsu D575A3 Super Dozer. This is no ordinary bulldozer. With a blade the size of a 3-car garage, this is the sumo champion of all earth movers.
We know what a bulldozer is. Something with tracks with a big blade that pushes dirt. But, you know, there's bulldozers and then there's super dozers.
It's not one of the small dozers you see in construction sites. It's 10 times the size of those.
With a 1,150 horsepower turbocharged after-cooled engine, this bulldozer can push 227,000 kilos of earth with every shove.
Watching a super dozer in action with that massive wall of steel is really a treat.
This thing is fantastic. It's John Wayne, you know, bring on the Marines kind of thing. It's a big deal.
Usually, a bulldozer just pushes dirt. This Komatsu dozer, with a unique blade design that tilts, can also scoop up dirt and almost float it over the ground.
And the reason that's a good idea is you're not now pushing against the ground and you don't have a lot of resistance. You're not trying to roll the dirt. It's an incredibly efficient machine and it does its job very well.
There are only 45 of these beasts operating in the world. They're normally found in the larger mines of America, Canada, and Australia, where long, straight pushes are the name of the game.
It definitely improved the production on our mines. You can do so much more work with basically one operator, and that's what makes it feasible to have the machine.
This machine isn't just about productivity, it's also about comfort.
What we are trying to do is keep the track on the ground. Whenever the track is off the ground and slams back into the ground, you get shock up to the operator.
The undercarriage of the superdozer follows the contour of the ground with independent seesaw-like movements. And to further decrease vibration, rubber shock absorbers were added, giving this machine the best traction of any dozer on the market. A smooth ride over rough terrain may be guaranteed by Komatsu, but what about big objects in its path? The greatest ever pitted the D575A3 against a pickup truck.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty silly idea. That would definitely fall into the unapproved application format of a D575.
Bulldozers take advantage of their weight when dozing. As the heavier the machine, the more traction it has to push heavy loads. This superdozer weighs 150,000 kilos. And although it exerts only 26 kilos of ground pressure per square centimeter, its massive overall weight quickly and effortlessly turns the truck into roadkill. That's one way to measure the weight of this machine, but how about its power? We've seen how a superdozer can go over almost anything. But ever wondered how a mobile home would stand up to a pressing from a dozer? No, neither did we, until we were given not one, but 2 superdozers. This is about sheer brute force. That's 14 meters of trailer crushed by the combined 23,000 horsepower of 2 superdozers in a little less than 13 seconds.
I think the trailer crushed a little bit quicker than I thought it would. It was only a matter of seconds before it was gone. I think if you compare a D575 A-3 to a Hurricane, the winner has to be the dozer.
These are the big guns. This is for the big leagues.
The D575's weight, size, and power make it the perfect piece of equipment for large mining operations, but they also limit its use.
I think this is probably the largest bulldozer that we'll see in quite some time. To go to a larger machine would require a lot more cost, and it just doesn't work out in dollars and cents.
There are not so many operations of the size to use the Komatsu D575.
This Komatsu superdozer is the ultimate machine if you want to push large loads of dirt in a short time. But for longer distances, it's a waste of power. And while it's able to crush and destroy almost everything in its path, it can only move at 16 kilometers per hour. For these reasons, the superdozer is buried at number 3 on our list. Before finally revealing the greatest digger, here's a giant that is the cornerstone of almost all mining operations. Standing at number 2, the Liebherr T282B haul truck.
The T82 with its edges, which is enormous tires, with its big radiator, it doesn't hide its power, it is just pure macho.
Mining kept saying they wanted bigger, they wanted better, they wanted faster. The T282B does it.
It's the biggest dump truck there is. It's not just the size of a house, it's the size of an office block. And it's an office block that'll do 40 miles an hour. When it drives past you, the earth shakes. It's fantastic.
The T282B has an engine weighing a whopping 9,000 kilos, burns 5,500 litres of diesel a day, and does 13 litres to the kilometre. That's 13 litres to the kilometre.
It's unique because it's diesel-electric drive, unlike some other trucks which are mechanical drive. An electric drive truck is simple in that it uses very few rotating parts as opposed to rotating drive lines and transmissions and various components like that.
Moving this giant forward is one thing. Stopping it is another, especially as this truck doesn't have conventional brakes. This monster relies on its electric motors to slow it down. The motors work like in a normal car, where changing gear from third to second slows it down. Keeping this 800-ton beast under control needs more than brakes. It requires a very special touch.
I'm not really sure why there's so many female drivers out here. It's been said that women drive them better. We don't make any comparisons between the men and the women here. We all drive the trucks. First time I ever sat in the driver's seat of one of those, it was pretty intimidating. But after about 2 weeks or so, you get into the flow of driving them and you get used to the size of them, and then you don't really notice how big they are compared to the rest of them. When you're operating something this large, you get used to the fact that there's a lot of smaller pieces of equipment, smaller vehicles around you. I never thought I would be able to do it or never even considered trying it, but it's fun. It makes me more confident in myself. Honestly, after being taught how to drive these, I feel like I can do anything.
No matter how many times you see it, there's still a feeling that how can something as big as this be able to move around at 40 miles an hour? It's the same kind of feeling you get when you see a 747 that weighs 250 tons actually taking off. The feeling is the same.
They are designed to move material quickly, so the fastest they can get between that shovel and that crusher, the better. And obviously, the more they can carry. So that's the whole point of doing a large, fast haul truck.
It's more than just a dump truck. It's almost like a armored car, in a way. When you see that big pile in the back of a haul truck, drive off with it. It's kind of like money in the bank.
Although the T282B is the biggest and best at what it does, it still needs a loader to fill it up. For that reason, it stands at number 2 on our list. Coming up, our number 1, the greatest ever digger. And in this world of big, bigger, and biggest, you may be surprised by the size of our champion. We've all seen machines that either dig, scrape, load, drag, push, or carry. So far, it's been all about raw power. But our number 1 is about to radically change things as it does it all. After 9 earth-moving Goliaths, here's David, the incredibly small yet efficient JCB backhoe loader.
In many ways, the JCB reminds me of the common ant. Not the biggest, not the most powerful, but still one of nature's most versatile little excavators.
What's great about a backhoe loader is it's a jack of all trades. It's like a Swiss Army knife.
It's a popular machine, and it has transformed the way we actually work in a whole range of earth-moving things.
Although it's not the largest machine by any means, It is the most adaptable. It can do more different jobs than any of the other machines we have on our list.
1 out of every 4 backhoes is a JCB. And if you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, of course, the definition of, hydraulic digger is JCB.
JCB have sold over 325,000 machines on 5 continents since first hitting the world's building sites in 1952. The backhoe loader was born of the need for multiple functions from just one machine.
Really, a backhoe loader is versatility to the nth degree. You've got 3 pieces of construction equipment tied into one. First, you have a tractor. Next, you have a loader. The ability to move large amounts of material from point A to point B. And then really the main operating tool of the machine is going to be the back end. It's a small machine, but it's a very powerful machine. But the key to the backhoe loader is its versatility.
But JCB is not just about digging, drilling, or pushing. This machine is much more adaptable.
What sets JCB apart from the competitors is a host of unique applications. You can put in upwards of 500 attachments onto the backhoe loader, again, making the operator more productive because it's going to give him a more versatile machine.
I think certainly in engineering you've got to have the products right, and we fortunately had the right sort of product to do that with. And I guess
Sir Anthony Bamford is the older son of Joseph Cyril Bamford, the man whose initials, JCB, became the standard of quality for digging machines.
It's no good just having a well-engineered product. You've got to go out and sell it. And he actually did go out and sell it. I mean, he sold his very first product himself in the marketplace.
Joe's selling skills were evident when he began a great tradition of JCB stunts in the 1960s. He involved royalty at lavish presentations and even organized elaborate demonstrations performed to showcase the versatility of the machine.
It's all part of selling the sizzle, really, not selling the steak. You've got to make it interesting.
Reliability is very, very key for these items of equipment, and the 3CX backhoe loader stands up to all the abuse that the kids can throw at it.
Hugh Edelanu owns Diggerland, the world's first adventure park entirely dedicated to construction equipment.
I just love diggers myself. We do a lot of unusual things and fun things with JCB equipment. We have the world's fastest JCB that's road legal. Its top speed is a closely guarded secret. Suffice to say that it can overtake trucks on the highway without too much of a problem.
Hugh took 22 hours to cross the entire British Isles, and the record he holds is probably here to stay. For him, it's just another way to spend as much time as he can around the digger.
It's just awesome.
To demonstrate the JCB's adaptability and efficiency, the greatest ever has pitted our #1 machine against a rugby team. A world first, we think. The objective is simple. Dig a 1 metre wide, 1 metre deep and 7 metre long ditch as fast as possible.
2, 1, go!
15 strapping, muscle-bound, beer-filled rugby players against the ant of the construction industry, the JCB backhoe loader. Surely it's no competition.
Keep it up, lads, come on!
Both teams start quickly, but with some deft flicks and a few cleverly placed scoops, the machine soon has the edge. A 1 metre deep trench proves to be a mere hindrance to a machine designed to dig as deep as 6 metres. Although in top physical shape, the men are no match for the machine. The hydraulic power of the backhoe does the job in 14 minutes and 56 seconds, leaving the rugby team trailing way behind.
Well, gentlemen, I'm afraid modern technology has beaten the rugby team, but nevertheless.
We at JCB are honored to be considered #1 on the top 10 greatest earth movers of all time. I think the versatility of the machine has really allowed us to gain that stature. When you look at other pieces of construction equipment that are out there, I'd be willing to bet our machines have probably moved more earth than the other machines on your list.
It's been hijacked!
The backhoe loader is never the most efficient machine at doing any particular job. Its real success is that it'll do just about anything, and no other machine comes close in that respect.
Every site needs a JCB because there's always a small job to do. It can do 101 jobs.
It's not necessarily the biggest, the baddest, and the most powerful that come out on top. Sometimes it's the smallest and more versatile tool that comes in number one. That's why in our top 10 list of the world's greatest earth movers, JCB comes in number one.
So there you have it. The JCB is the greatest ever. Agree or disagree? The fact is that without these machines, life wouldn't be what it is today.